Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a little flag. We lost our slightly bigger one. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Start off with the minutes from last week's meeting, February 11th, 2019. We had an update from the transportation bus. We approved use of the courthouse lawn for activities. We had an executive session to do a department head evaluation, and we had a meeting with the highway department, just some allowances for pipeline, and talked again about something we'll address today with the letter to the block pit representation. We had a report from the LEPP program, which is your Zoning and Environmental Health Services, Abilene County. Talked about the resolution presented by North Central Regional Planning Commission. We still need to receive information on that. We discussed the public statement regarding the nursing home, and the ambulance director, the interim director, came to speak with us about a purchase, and we approved cereal malt beverage license for Knotheads, and we adjourned the meeting. I don't see any corrections. Does anyone have any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Move we approve.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from February 11th, 2019. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. And correspondence. Let's see. We have a letter here signed by various people, about 10 people, dated on the 12th of this month. Lincoln County Commissioners, we as the citizens of Golden Belt, Valley, and parts of Indiana Townships regret to inform you that your blade man has removed most of the red rock off of Elk Drive and has destroyed many of the roads in the above-mentioned townships, making it unsafe to travel some of them. We request training for this gentleman or a new blade operator who does know how to grade roads. This is also the responsibility of the road supervisor and public works. Wherever Mr. Howell and Mr. O'Hare, they should have been checking his work and all the highway department employees. Now they can spend the taxpayers' money to put the roads back in shape. There is no need for new equipment when you have no one that knows how to run what we have. If you're going to let this continue, there is not an all-weather road going from 120th unless you go to Iron or Interstate 70, that's 10 miles. What do you do in case of fire or ambulance run or any emergency? How many more roads are you going to let be destroyed? The blame does not end with the blade man, but with the road supervisor and public works. Do they ever check the employees' work if they are not called? The more taxes we pay, the fewer services we have. Farmers and the ones that keep this county going, farmers are the ones that keep this county going, and they seem to get the short end of the stick every time. Thank you for your time. Some of these names I honestly cannot read, but they're all signed 120th Road and Fox Drive and 150th and 120th. A note here says, we are concerned for our children's safety and this is a school bus route. Taxpayers of Lincoln County roads, wind farm money should be put onto our roads. There's some notes there with the signatures. We'll have to bring that to the attention of the Public Works and road supervisors when are they scheduled today? At 11:30, they're scheduled. We have some bills here from Lincoln Park Manor mostly. Let's see. Home oil, $285.96 for diesel fuel. I assume that's for the generator. Lincoln Park Manor, Arjo is the company. $1,340.59. It doesn't say what this is. Dawn, do you know what this Arjo bill is for $1,300 something from Lincoln Park Manor? It just has a document number and a billing number. They're calling it an open item list. I don't even know what that means. I think we need more information on that one. A lock and key, $42.77 from Lincoln Building Supply. Phoenix Supply. Another bath shower kit. Is this the same one? $262.54. This is dated on February. Oh no, ship date is February 28th. Order date, January 24th. We'll have to check that one too. That might be a duplicate, because that's exactly what it said on the last one. Venetian bronze. Lincoln Building Supply for $16.99 to Lincoln Park Manor. Polo Passage, I'm not sure what that means. Here we have from Phoenix Supply, glass and surface cleaner for Lincoln Park Manor. But I assume since we aren't getting our rent paid, we'll end up paying that too. Alliance Monitoring Technologies for Lincoln Park Manor, a lithium battery, $122.65. I think we need some more information about some of those bills before we approve them. We have and we received an email from Jerry Philbrick that he had printed out from the public transportation manager to him. And it's basically in response to our questioning as to how we can make amendments to the future budget since they're on a different fiscal year than we are. As to the reorganization, your question is really in two parts. For our route fare charges, please follow our policy manual guidance on page 23, and then he lists the link where we can find the manual. And if your change in governance structure would modify your fiscal representative, name of agency, CEO, bank account number, authorized signer, or TAM signer, we'd need to get updated documents in place to make sure changes happen to KDOT's site so that no funding can continue with as little lag time between agency structures. So that funding can continue, excuse me. If you decide to go this route, please check back with us, and either Corey or I will go into more detail. So basically, we need to look at that manual. Mr. Wallace, you had asked about how we can change that potentially, so we can look that up. I will save the purchasing policy for after we have our last appointment, and also as far as discussing the mill levy for the hospital and the letter for the block pit. Dawn, did you say you had something? Oh, this is it. But this, Mr. Driscoll is the attorney for the block pit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. We can do that afterward. We do have a tax abatement from the appraiser's office that was sent down under Trevor Reinert. He moved, and so this is for his Dodge pickup in the amount of 4636. So I'd move to approve tax abatement 2018-13. Do I
Second.
have a second? Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed, motion carried. All right, Mr. Schneider, would you like to approach? Thank you.
Here's the stuff too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this, I'm gonna put this with this. The Newport banner.
Morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
I guess I am back to inquire about my gravel road based on the resolution that the county does gravel roads for economic benefit.
Yeah. Well, I went out to visit with Steve, Mr. Schneider the other day, and you showed me what your road you was wanting to gravel, and your Hunting Lodge, and your son has a house there too, right?
Yes, he does.
And your county's already done some work there, right? Where they
Right, they high graded.
high graded and
Mhm.
done some work there and that. And so I see what's going. I mean, I think that's not a bad deal. I have the only issue we had was you guys have the whole history of this whole issue back and forth between you and the county and having problems. And eventually I see we went to back in December 7th, 2017. You guys determined that you would have a mediator. Both parties have agreed to submit to mediation. And that's the letter here I have from our county attorney with some other information. And then I have another letter back from this mediator, Mr. Thomas Burscheid, December 12th, 2017. And this was to the county attorney and also to Mr. Krangle, your attorney. Said this letter served as a memorandum to verify the settlement reached on this letter now on December 11th that Mr. Schneider would pay a lump sum of $10,000 as part of this mediation. Now I ask you about that, and you said this was, even though this letter is here back from our county attorney, you're saying this, you never agreed to this. Is that correct? And
Not in principle, it was different terms of what that $10,000 was. And that's kind of, this is a settlement agreement, a copy of it, and it has notes in it, kind of alluding to some of the things that he came and said to us that didn't reflect in the agreement that the county attorney wrote up. We thought that we were going to have an opportunity to negotiate that agreement, but for some reason we did not have any opportunity to enter anything into that agreement, and the county attorney did the agreement without really conferring with us.
so this whole issue ended then until we're now, right here,
Right.
now again. And the only issue I have, and I'm not against your road, and I think you have a justifiable case that if we're a good road out there, you have a hunting lodge and a home, your sons. So, and a lot of work's been done already. It's just that we've entered into this, what's the word?
Negotiation.
Yeah, we got a mediation.
Sorry.
So it already went down that road too, mediation, and now you're wanting to say forget all that mediation, and you just want your road
That
and
was,
county to pay for it all? Alexis, where do you stand on this whole thing? You know all of this, and I know he's in your district, and you'd like to see the road.
One
Okay.
second. The former county commissioner, Dwight Heller's here,
Okay,
and I'd been to them, and I had a trailer house out there, and and they told me at that time that it did not justify a gravel road, but if I built my lodge, that they would do my gravel road based on the resolution that the county has, their own resolution, based on tax benefit and economic benefit to the county.
I believe that was in 2004.
Yeah, somewhere back in there.
so okay, so you're saying they kind of set a precedent with the resolution,
With the
saying,
resolution, and I built a lodge, and
with the understanding you would probably get your road gravel because of that.
And so I told my son that, and we put the house up there, and so he's not real happy with me because
He doesn't have a good
he
road
doesn't
on-
have a road.
Okay.
Correct, so.
And we're, to a point here is, and I'd like Mrs. Flu's opinion on this. What do you think of this mediation and, what the so-called agreement that he would pay part of it? Are we supposed to forget that now, or what?
I never signed the agreement, so
Okay.
it never went forward, but that mediation was agreement in the context that before we went, if I filed suit against the county, the judge likes to have you go through mediation and try to work it out before you go down that path, and that is one reason
And that's what you were doing here?
that's what we were doing there, yes.
Okay. And I kinda understood this, that said, it was like, when it's like you go in arbitration, like sports players, they can't agree on a salary between a team. They go in arbitration, the judge determines this is the money you're gonna get, and both sides settle with that or agree to it. And I kinda assumed that's what was going on here, but you're saying that ain't the case.
No, not necessarily, no,
Okay.
each side had their own sides.
The way I understand it is we were noticed of an intent to file suit against the county. And when we received that notice, we proposed the mediation. Our county attorney selected the mediator, and we met here, and they sat upstairs, and we sat here, and the mediator traveled back and forth between the two parties. And we came up with what we proposed in this particular agreement, and the mediator relayed those messages to the other party, and then he went home and drew up this agreement and sent it back. And we agreed to it, and he never signed it, is what he's saying.
Okay.
So we did have the mediation session, and it was back and forth on the terms. And when we received the actual agreement, it was afterwards. So what you're saying, I'm assuming, is that when you received the final agreement, you said, no, I'm not agreeing to this,
Agreement based on that it wasn't what he told us.
right?
It wasn't exactly what he had relayed to us, what you,
Mr.
What-
Triangle, are you here as legal representation for Mr. Schneider?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to clarify for us what this party's perception was of the agreement, and then what came back differently on paper?
And we spent quite a bit of time, as you said, before mediation, and then to do mediation. We received from Tom, the mediator, the information that he said was the agreement we had. And it was very close to the agreement we had. The agreement we had was $5,000 would be paid by Steve now, and another $1,000 a year for the next 5 years, for a total of $10,000. As part of that agreement, we had said that the out years, the $1,000 a year should be exclusively used for that road improvement, not any other purpose. I have a bunch of stuff here, but in the interest of time, I think the whole thing fell apart when, on the interpretation of the following 5 years, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. We believed it was agreed that it was going to go into an escrow and not be used for any other purpose on those out years. I believe that the settlement agreement that was reached but not signed says that. But it also says that the 5-year outlook would be paid up front and put into an escrow account, and then presumably if only $700 was used, the $300 would be rebated back. That is what and there was some back and forth, I found in the file, on exactly that point. And Jennifer did the original agreement, we had some back and forth on it. The major thing that was done at that time was to talk about putting the $1,000 a year into a special account, whatever the mechanism might be that the county would have. And that felt to Steve, I believe, like it was a change in what we'd agreed to, and that what he hadn't realized that the $10,000 was going to be paid up front. He thought it was $5,000 up front. and then year to year to year to year
Another 1,000 per year for 5 years.
for 5 years. Or whatever was needed,
Mhm.
because that was earmarked money for that road, for the two roads, I should say. I've left out a lot of detail.
So are you saying that the current mediation agreement as it stood from last year was that it was 10,000 up front just to be paid to the county, and there was, I mean, I don't know
No
that we,
stipulation of how
Right.
that 10,000 was gonna,
I mean, we
be spent.
literally run like one big checking account, so I don't know how we particularly designate, other than we keep track of our funds, you know, we may have a fund line item for certain things. So I guess I'm not clear on how we do that.
Well, there are several ways that it could be done. It could be done out of the treasurer's office. It could be a special account set up in the chart of accounts. It could be done informally by just keeping track of,
How much is applied to that
In your-
particular road?
in year 2022, $700 was used to re-gravel section A, B, C, or something like that. We never got to the mechanics of that, because the principle was the question of whether the whole $10,000 had to be paid up front, and then someone else worry about the 5, or whether 5 could be paid up front and have somebody worry about the year by year by year. It's a very modest difference. There's not a,
You must not have been at the same mediation I was, because I was under the assumption that under no circumstances were we going to agree to that $1,000 for that road. Absolutely, we're not going to agree with it. We wanted it paid up front, we would gravel the road, and then we would maintain it. And that's where we kind of fell apart, is that, I know what that said, but that wasn't what we agreed to the mediator to, that money was going to be paid up front, we would hold it until that road was gravelled, and then we would move that money into the road and bridge account. We have always said that if he will buy the gravel and haul it, we have no problems. And that's where we come into the money, because he didn't want to haul the gravel, he wanted us to haul the gravel, so that's fine, we can haul it, and we can gravel it if you'll pay for the gravel. It's basically what we have done for years in this county, is people have hauled their gravel and gravelled their roads, and then we maintain them. And we can't have 300 accounts out there of people putting money in saying, well, this money is just to gravel our road. That's a nightmare. That's a total nightmare to keep track of that. That's impossible.
at the same time, you have a,
I hear what you're saying. I never heard that message from during the mediation.
I don't know, but that's the way I understood what the mediator was. That we were gonna have that money up front, we would gravel the road, and then we would move the money out after we gravelled the road. We weren't going to cash that money, we were gonna hold it in escrow until that road was completed, and then we would get rid of the money, and we would upkeep the road. He didn't have to pay $1,000 a year to upkeep it. We were gonna upkeep it like we do all the roads in this county. Whether you think they're sufficient or not, I mean, that's the policy.
Well, I'm astounded, for whatever reason. I understand what you are talking about, because that's what we did 35 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand exactly what you're talking about. But that was not ever a part of the mediation process. Tom never said that to us. It's not reflected in his
Well,
letter.
then maybe we need to have Tom come back.
Well, let me just say, it's not reflected in his letter summarizing the mediation. And we never heard, I never heard, I'll speak for myself, I never heard anything back from the commission that traditional way was going to be done. The only thing that I have ever heard until just now is what's in the settlement agreement, which says of this amount, well, let's see, Schneider shall pay a lump sum, $10,000, into a fence sub-account to be used only for project purposes, not for any other use, $1,000 to be reserved for use in each of 5 consecutive years, only toward the purchase of sand or APAC materials used to surface and maintain the project roads. So I'll give you my apology for not being aware of any other thing. This was the second draft that Jennifer put together as county attorney.
That, as I said, when that draft came across, we did have some questions about it. I did question the county attorney about it.
So if I may interject at this point, just for your sake, Randy, I have some notes here that I took March 13th of 2017. So this was almost 2 years ago when we started this discussion. And Mr. Wallace, you just said that this is the way that we've been doing it. But where I initially found a problem with our negotiations beginning is I wrote down a couple names here, Mr. Tyson, Mr. Worth, and Mr. Kraus. Those are all 3 homes where we did provide at no expense to the homeowner a certain amount of grading and gravel. Now, it's not the extent, it's not the length to which you were requesting. I have 3/4 of a mile, a half a mile, and then I don't have the length written down in this other particular spot. But my concern is there is no consistency, and I brought this up in the beginning. We haven't redressed that policy that we have. We haven't changed it. I think it's very clear that between the 80s and the year 2000, we were trying to lessen the burden on the taxpayer. That's how I read it. I mean, that's debatable, I suppose, but what it specifically says is basically to increase economic stimulus in the county in order to help people want to put their homes in the county. We were going to provide this. Now, being that I'm financially responsible for the spending for the county, I would like to see some participation by the homeowners, but again, we don't have that in writing. We need to specifically address that with our own policies and say, this is what we require from you. We require 50% of the total cost, or we require you to pay all of the gravel price and we will provide the machinery and the dirt work, etc. I'm really still disappointed that we haven't fixed that, because as a commission, that's our responsibility. And this has been 2 years now. We're just lucky that no one else has come after Mr. Schneider and said, hey, you know, this is what your policy says and I want you to stick to it. So I do have a concern that there are some specific examples where we have done work. As far as I know, one of these is in my district, but the other thing is, at this time, this particular year in 2017, I had gone around looking at some different roads where we were working on at the time and putting new gravel down and fixing them. And one in particular didn't even have a home on it. I know Mr. Schneider expressed some disgust because there's a road north of him that just received new gravel as a temporary experiment, because we purchased this gravel from a different county at a higher cost than what we pay, even sometimes to APAC. And it was put on a road that has 2 homes that have other gravel roads as exits from their residence.
Was it gravel prior?
Oh, I'm sure it was a gravel road.
Well, we're maintaining gravel roads. We're talking about putting gravel on a road that has never been gravel, that's dirt. We cannot afford to do this for every home in this county.
Then why haven't we changed the policy?
They can build them out 3 or 4 miles from a gravel road. I mean, that
I
is
understand your
impossible
concern.
for us to finance.
I understand your
Now,
concern. But if
we're
that's true,
trying,
then why haven't
you
we
know.
changed the policy?
You know, the resolution, and it's your resolution, and you have chose to ignore the resolution. Or
Does
not-
it say,
and not-
does it say that we will gravel a road to your house? Or does it say we will consider?
It says the county commissioners shall review each request for county road improvement based on the merit of the request and formulate a decision on a case-by-case basis to encourage economic development of rural areas of Lincoln County.
Case by case basis.
Right, and the
You
wording
know, it
there
makes
is
a difference whether we're
encourage.
talking about 1/4 of a mile or whether we're talking about 2 miles.
But let's use
Makes
the
a
words.
lot of difference.
Let's use the words in the resolution. The word is encourage. So I don't feel like the commission is being very encouraging, number one. Let's use another concept in there. Economic development. I personally have a problem that Mr. Schneider has spent money to build a home and a camping site of sorts for his hunters in my district, where you knew at the time that you didn't have gravel to that particular road, and it's debatable in the past as to what was discussed with the commission, but your increased tax payment to this county is now what?
went from $1,760 in 2014 to a little over 4,000 this year.
So 3,000.
It's like $1,600 for the lodge, $800 for the house tax increase
per year.
per year. Yes.
Okay. So that's my concern, that we're asking him to pay more taxes and that we weren't offering this same, basically this same procedure that we had done for these prior homes. And you said about it not being, these homes were not gravelled too prior.
I understand that, but we're talking about 2 miles compared to a half a mile.
And I thought that was the reason that we did want some financial
And you know,
input.
as I said, we have graded the road up for him. He was gonna sand it. That was fine. We don't usually sand roads. We agreed to let him sand it. Then all of a sudden, nope, you're not gonna sand it. You're gonna have to gravel. I mean, every time we reach an agreement, you change your mind.
That's not exactly.
Well, it is. It is. It's
No,
exactly what's going on.
It's not exactly right. The plan to sand certain areas was reviewed with the road commissioner, with Michael. The road commissioner in one of the commission meetings said to us when we were talking about this in 2016-17 that no matter what the agreement was to do the road in a certain way, he wasn't going to do that. He was going to follow the way he always did roads. That should be in the minutes.
And it is. You know, defeated the purpose of me putting sand on by pulling dirt up on the existing natural rock structure. And the agreement was it was only going to create and correct a drainage situation in a distance of 1,600 feet. So, you know, really the the agreement to do the road was broken, and I wrote you a complaint and had a formal complaint of the agreement that was not what it was supposed to be.
I believe you were in here also and thanked us for grading it up.
Back early in 17, it was brought up about grading and shaping roads, and it was asked if that was within the budget or you have to budget for that. And you and Mr. Finch both said that's all figured in the budget, and so it basically come down to the cost of gravel. And so I asked what the cost of gravel was, and you said $1 a yard. So I came back to the next meeting, I offered to pay for the gravel, but then you moved it off to the next meeting. Then you wanted $5.50 a yard, and then you wanted to figure in the cost of grading and everything else to a cost of about $23,000 for 2 miles that I should be responsible for.
I think it was 15,000 is where
that was for a mile and a half, and that didn't include everything.
Where we said that you put the 15,000, we would complete the project.
I think if we look at this process, Steve has the misfortune of not living in Lincoln County, but he owns land in Lincoln County. He's contributing to the economic development of Lincoln County. He has done everything that he has done on the understanding that there would be a gravel road coming at some point from 2004 to today. The hunting lodge is, I frankly have never seen it, but it's about 60 feet by 30 or 40 feet, something like that.
Yeah, 32 by 64.
A couple of bathrooms in it and
4 bedrooms, kitchen, everything.
I mean, it's nice. The house was moved in on a new basement, something I have some experience with, unfortunately. If we strip away everything that's been said and just look at it today as a fresh case, if you wanted to go back and make a proposal to us based on the way things were done in the 1980s, we would certainly look at that, where we pay for the gravel and you do everything else. If you wanted to go back to what was actually decided in the mediation, which is to have the $10,000 on some kind of a structure, At no point were we told that it was a nightmare to do it that way. It got into the settlement agreement, it was proposed to us that settlement agreement had been approved, and it was the offer that Jennifer was making on behalf of the county. And it didn't make sense that it blew up on that
Mr.
basis.
Crandall.
I think we will have to visit with our attorney about that.
Yeah, if I may interrupt,
She's in a
because
murder trial right now.
Yeah, I know, but we're going to have to visit, since you're saying that she put that in, we need to get her verification of it.
in the interest of time, if I may, because we have some people waiting. And I'm not speaking for the board, I'm just throwing a suggestion out there. If we were to base our current negotiation on the mediation and ask for the $5,000 up front, and then stipulate that any further requests for gravel that you have, you purchase the gravel at that time for the next so many years, maybe that's something that we could agree to. That way you don't have to front all of the money at once. You can front what's needed to get the gravel there, and if you have any further requests in the future, then we're not obligated to do it at our expense for, let's say, those particular 5 years into the future. I'm gonna throw that out there. I'm not asking you to agree to it, but I would like to move on to our next session, and if
I would like to give you a copy, even though you probably already have it. The date on the top, that's the settlement agreement after some back and forth. And at the bottom of the page, you see where the $10,000 is discussed, things like that. The $4,000, the $3,500 increment in taxes, what was it?
It's around 4,200 a year now.
Is that what's the increment? Since there was
I
nothing.
think you said 17 to 42, correct?
Yeah, 17 something to 4,200.
Year after year after year.
But
there's
that's
a
a misnomer, that's a misnomer too, because that 1,700 wouldn't be 1,700 in 2019 taxes, because the appraisal of land has gone up, and so that would have increased that base too. So, you know, let's just not say that it went from 1,700 to 4,200. There's some increase in that value of that land itself.
That's called
That's already
investment.
calculated into the increased
That's called
revenue that
investment.
we're,
That investment was put into the land for that purpose. That
The land, the
has
price.
benefited your county budget every year since then, and it will
That's right.
continue,
And
and it will go up further. And if it hadn't been encouraged to put the road in,
But my point is, Bob, is that if nothing had been done there, the taxes of 1,700 on that pasture land, or whatever that ground is, would be higher in 2019 than
that's already
2019.
configured into the math.
No,
because
it's
you're-
not.
Yes, it absolutely is, because the appraisal value is X for 1 year and Y for the next.
You can't take taxes
the
today.
land is appraised, but also the buildings are appraised.
That's right. And so I'm saying the $3,000 isn't all his investment.
Yes.
It is part of the land as well.
That is if I may say so, that is not a very good way to view it. That is not encouraging for economic development. That rises to a level of misunderstanding that I'm just amazed.
Well, it comes back to not reviewing our own resolutions and keeping to our own policies, which is something that I'm very disappointed in the commission
And
for.
that's where I'm at on that resolution and what I was promised.
You don't want, do you have a copy of
I
this?
have that.
So where are we at here? We're gonna
Do
read,
you understand my suggestion that I still ask for his initial upfront coverage
The-
for the gravel to be placed, but then anything further into the future, I mean, it's really not a good idea for the county to be responsible for an individual person's money. That's how I feel. I mean, that defeats the purpose of tax dollars. So I would say that if you could think about that, you know, in the future, if you requested gravel, then you would pay for that particular amount of gravel that you were requesting for a set amount of
On a
time.
year-by-year basis.
That would be my assumption.
So
I mean, it's basically along the lines of the mediation, but we're not asking you for 5 years up front. Because as you said, what if we didn't do anything with it for a year? Then you're paying into that, and we don't necessarily do anything. And yet we've collected your tax money and potentially even invested it somewhere else. I understand the concern.
And that is a very logical way, and I think probably a very good way to do it, if the $5,000 is paid up front, and then come back to Steve for $200, for $700, for something else.
Actually, I'd probably haul my own rock if needed here and there.
And then ask us to spread
Yeah.
it.
I think we'll have to think about the precedents we would be setting if we did that.
I think we can clear up the whole precedence issue by simply reviewing our resolution and making necessary changes and adopting a new resolution that is very clear. That says,
Yes.
when you have a dirt road and you would like gravel on it, you're going to pay 50% of the cost, and we will cost share. Or not, or we will, or you will pay 100%. But until we actually set forth some strict guidelines, we're just gonna continue to have this kind of misunderstanding, and anybody can negotiate. I mean, the word encourage is in there, encourage economic development. To me, that's very clear, but apparently it can be debated. So I would like to see the resolution fixed. And I said that 2 years ago.
So
I
for
think
now,
that-
Mr.
And I think that $5,000, up front, gravel the road would be probably something we could work with. So just like what you said.
Now, I will have you know that we increased the price of gravel. So if you purchase it yourself, that, I'm letting you know that we were paying out $1 per cubic yard.
Yeah, I know that. You're paying $2.
Yes,
And then there's always the digging and the loading and
yes.
so forth and so on. I do.
And Mr. Schneider informed me there's a pit close to this road.
That was not
Whereas
open
before,
before.
when it was figured, it would have been hauled further, so which would have made it more expensive. So
Exactly.
maybe this would be a little cheaper from that pit now, right?
Correct.
If we use that.
Right.
So what are we gonna do, think about this whole issue and come back with that?
We would really appreciate that if you would. There are two separate issues here, as I see it. One issue is what is the county policy, and how do you live up to it, and how do you manage it, and how do you handle it? The second is what I consider to be a pretty big injustice to the Schneider family in the money that they went ahead and put into the county for buildings that would otherwise not be there and be taxed.
Yeah, I've seen that too. So you come back later and we'll discuss this later, or what? Is that what you think? Or what do you wanna do?
Are you prepared to say that you're accepting what I put on the table as a...
I would do the $5,000 when you gravel my road,
Now,
yes.
and if we do how much expense would this be to the county? Do we have any guess
I
on
think
that?
we need to know. I think we'll
Yeah.
have to have our road supervisor figure what
We'd
this
have to
cost
have-
is, because
Yeah.
as you said, gravel is more than doubled since we
Yeah.
did this.
Yeah,
I will bring this up to our public works director and the road supervisor today, and then
They did provide the
the
cost
cost
at one
analysis.
time, but what they did when they provided it before, they assumed it was add-on to the whole budget. They didn't assume it was part of the budget, and a large component of what they presented to us before would
I
consisted
understand
of,
that.
consisted of,
It wasn't calculated into the already assumed overhead of operating
Right.
expenses and employee
Exactly.
time. I understand that.
That was already defined a year ago.
I saw that. I will bring that up to them today, and we'll see
Okay.
what they can come up with. And it calculated a different distance to the gravel pit, so we'll do that as well.
and what it would cost do we need to have a design engineer with that or not? Or are we just gonna dump gravel out there? All that stuff needs to be determined, right?
Well, they know how to gravel the road.
Yeah, but this is a new road, kind of, so it's not like gravel on an old road.
Well, what Bob
Like
Howell
Bob
said
said.
is that he had prepped it as he would prep any road for gravel, according to KDOT standards, is what he said at that meeting, so.
Well, we can discuss that with them, then
Yeah.
get back with you guys, huh?
Yeah.
At least that's my opinion.
Yes.
Okay.
I will get back with you. Thank you. Alright. Thank you everyone else for being patient. We have a time slot scheduled to discuss funding for Council on Aging, the Lincoln Senior Center, and the Sylvan Senior Center. If you would please let them know in the hallway, I think they're waiting. Thank you. You could pull up some chairs, or if however you'd like to do that. You could probably come around the side too.
Okay, I got a question first. Read the paper last night, and I still haven't been approved as president of the Council on Aging. Yes or no?
We don't have to approve the board positions.
I'll be right back.
We just appoint the members, so you will organize yourselves. If you're the president, it's because your board voted
We
you.
haven't, we did not formally appoint you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it said it was
And
not
we're still
approved or
confused,
something.
and I'm sorry, I'm still confused, but to get it unconfused, we just want to appoint you to 2 years. Will that work?
Well, I'd be there longer.
Yeah,
Things
but-
have changed.
Yeah, I know, things have changed, and can we start anew and just get you on there and be over?
Have I been approved? Somebody said I hadn't been approved either.
We did, we approved them and then we disapproved them.
Yeah.
Did we formally do that though? I think we
Well, I
formally-
think I made the motion and then we had this.
My whole thing is I have no, I'm not approved, I have no authority to give you this stuff. Does that make sense?
Approved, we thought Judy was already still on.
So is it a new term for you or continuation
No,
of a term?
continuation.
Then
I'm
we don't need
supposed
to approve you.
That's what I keep saying, but that's not what it said in the,
That was the
Papers.
names that were given to us. That was the 3 names, their name was on the list.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You can come back.
does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
No, it does not. Nor does anything.
So am I on or not?
Yes.
You've
Thank
we've already done yours.
Okay, okay.
Whatever list Bob brought to us, we finished that list.
Okay, okay.
Here's a copy.
I am.
Oh, you're giving me more stuff.
Well, one is from council and one's from the senior center. I'm giving you in a road on their
Okay,
council. on-
okay.
Ma'am,
All right.
Oh, thank you.
Too much paper.
I know. A whole ream in front of me, I feel. Okay, so would you please introduce yourself and which organization you are representing today? Because we have a quadrifold meeting here with the commission and the 3 entities.
I'm Judy Albers, president of council, Lincoln County Council on Aging.
Okay,
Deb Ortiz, I'm the secretary of the board at the Lincoln Senior Center.
okay.
Jolene Cole, president of the board at the Lincoln Senior Center.
And I'm Nancy Nitch, the secretary of the Council on Aging,
Okay,
and secretary treasurer.
okay,
I'm Glenn Stegman, I'm the treasurer of this Lincoln Senior Center.
okay.
I'm
Any-
Jean Pringle and I just record things.
You're just coming to,
No, I'm the bookkeeper.
okay. For both entities?
Yes.
Senior
yes,
Center and Council on
Council
Aging, Lincoln Senior Center, okay.
And
We have-
then from Sylvan is back there.
Joey Small, Vice President of the Board at Sylvan.
Mike Cucky, representative, we've been here many times.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the Lincoln Senior Center, we brought a folder with our profit and loss and our 2019 budget. Some other things, the meal count that we've served. Just for your,
Is this the same
Result.
exact budget you had already put in with us?
for 2019?
Yes.
I would say, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And on the profit and loss, for our 2018 budget, we didn't receive the second disbursement, so we were going to inquire about that.
you did not receive the second disbursement from the LCCA?
Yes.
So you had put in a total budget to
Eh, okay, we put in a budget, the last 4 years, we've always received 31.5. And last year, 2018, we received 23,000. We didn't
So,
receive. And in the past, we never really received this at the same time from the council, or, you know, so we,
while
it
we're on the
was-
subject, how does the Lincoln Senior Center perceive the process of having to request their budget through the Council on Aging?
Worked before, you know. Until recently, it's worked before.
yeah, it, except we never knew when we were going to get it, how much we were going to receive. I realize there's a new council, and so I think we'd be, you know, that. It was very difficult not knowing when you were going to receive your money, how much you were going to receive, and stay on our budget. So,
And then last year, you never did receive the second part of your.
yes.
But
So
you were under the impression when you turned in your budget that you were going to receive
that,
100%
yes, we
of
were
the
going
funding,
to receive, yeah,
and then you didn't receive.
yes.
Yeah.
And as you can see, you know, I mean, we were 8,500 short, and
Which is exactly
yeah,
what you didn't
yeah,
receive. Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so your total budget request from last year was 31.5, and now it's to 48,220. Could you explain the increase there?
Well, what we've done, I think over the years, it just like increased by, you know, a certain percentage. So that we also have some things that we see coming down kind of in a, maybe like a long range 5-year, that, for one thing, our oven is about 40 years old, and we keep babying it along, which we've been told, you know, we're not going to be able to do that forever. Also, we have a concern with our back parking. We have probably a usable like 7 spaces back there for parking, but there's, when you come out the back door, there's some a concrete slab, and then the parking is gravel. And I've been involved with the center about the last 6 years, and in the last probably 3-4 years, we've had someone fall back there about every year, because the sun doesn't reach, and the
Sticks
gravel,
icy.
it just holds the, yeah. So that is another concern we know we're going to have to face. We've had Schwarzenegger come out and look, just without really pricing anything. He said, oh, like to pour a slab that we could, you know, and was talking in the $25,000 range. We've had others present to us, like maybe if we could cover that area to keep the, you know, weather off of it. So we're just kind of in the discussion part about that, but we see that as coming, you know. Also, the grant program that was offered by the Development Corporation, Beautiful, and the Lincoln Senior Center was approved for a match with that
For your
of
front.
5,000, yeah,
Yeah.
for our front.
Mhm.
So that would be 5,000 that we would have to match
Okay.
with that. The other thing is our ramp and our bathroom, it has been brought up, we're not handicap accessible. At one time we were, back years ago, and now we're not.
Change the standards.
So that will be something that we're facing. Right now, our ramp, it is wheelchair accessible. We've had a gentleman that used his power chair and could go up and down. We've many times helped people. We have a wheelchair at the senior center that will wheel them in or out. We have also had occasion that our ramp does meet the ambulance can get their transport bed in and out, because that has happened.
Mhm.
And like I said, the bathroom, we've tried to make it better, you know, more railings, more, you know, but
But does
the
it have to do
ramp,
with the width, the actual measurements of the inside of the interior bathroom?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I have a question about the budget here. The building expenses to the city of Lincoln, what is that for?
The building expenses.
Uh-huh. You have building expenses, city of Lincoln.
Utilities.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's your electric and water?
Yeah.
That's who they pay, the city of Lincoln.
Okay, and then $1,400 for gas.
Mhm.
Trash service supplies, insurance, and contract work, and repair. Okay, and then your wages. Now the wages, you have 18,000 listed, but you had actual expenses last year of over 19,000, but you only had budgeted 14,800. Do you know why that happened, or out of curiosity?
I would not be able to say, Glenn would, I would say our head cook and our manager are paid minimum wage by North Central Flint Hills Area on Aging.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pay for the assistant cook
Okay.
and for a supplement for our manager and our head cook.
That comes out to like 3 something an hour? Or?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
3 1/4,
Yeah.
Okay.
isn't it, or 260?
Well, it just depends on which one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks like their utilities went up about $3,000, so the AC or the heater must have been that much higher. That's about, and then also another repairs and maintenance went up about 2,000, so you must have had something break down, huh? A heater, air conditioner or something, or a cook stove.
And yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That I
So
know
there's
we've had
2,000
our
extra.
stove looked at, we've had to have the sink looked at and repaired, we've had,
So that's probably where your 4,000 difference.
and
Okay. And I do have one more question. So you don't have in your budget the fee to the North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging. Okay. What I've been told is in the past, the county had paid half out of our general fund, and the LCCA had paid half, and all of that money goes to North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging, who in fact is the actual executor of the Friendship Meals program. So I'm just wondering, to me it doesn't make sense why anyone else was paying that fee when Lincoln Senior Center is the only contact for North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging Friendship Meals. Does that make sense? Do you understand my question?
Council pays that.
Why?
I haven't found out because she hasn't been to a meeting. Next meeting she comes to, I'm gonna ask her.
Do you understand my question?
Yes,
If
because
the,
I had
if the
it.
senior center is the Friendship Meals provider, why is there another group paying the fee? Is kind of,
Because
I think
they
it's just
are
for the
supposed to
friendship
be
meals.
under us.
but what else does North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging do here?
Resources, they provide resources, like people can call,
Yeah, but they have Salina, they have other branches. I mean, we're paying a fee to them to provide those services, but we only utilize here
No, you utilize more than that. I think the health department utilizes them. I know, like, when my grandmother had a heart attack, when we were bringing her home, North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging provided somebody to come in and assess her home to determine whether or not she was capable of staying in her own home.
Yes, they do facility
So, I mean,
assessments.
It's to do,
Or,
I
and
think
nursing
they
home
provide more
assessments.
services and things like that.
okay.
But if I could interrupt, I think your question is, did the Council on Aging pay that fee? Somebody paid it, I don't remember who.
The Council on Aging has
Yeah,
been
we
paying
pay
it, but the prior years, maybe save the last 2, it was a split, 50-50. The LCCA was paying half and then the county general was paying half.
It
Then-
just seems to me like the end users maybe should.
I just feel like maybe that's something that needs to be budgeted into the Lincoln Senior Center since they're the ones that are actually, there's always been a misperception as to whether or not the Area Agency on Aging has any authority over the Council on Aging, which they don't. But in
Next
prior
Tuesday,
years,
we have a meeting and someone from Manhattan will be here and this is a question that will be brought up.
but do you understand
I
what I'm
can't
saying?
answer you today. Yes,
Yeah. The North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging is just that. It's an agency. They have no authority. However, they do distribute funds that they collect from the federal and state level. And when they distribute those funds, they facilitate programs such as the Friendship Meals. And then they do the other things that Dawn said out of their other locations. Someone from Salina is very capable of coming here and doing a nursing home assessment for someone when you call to use that resource. That's what they're there for. I just think in the past, I mean, I've attended LCCA meetings where they've brought in area agency on aging to be an authoritative voice in the meeting, and that's not how this works. Our local council on aging is its own entity, and you don't report to anyone. So I'm just kind of confused as to, now, if they wanted to pay the fee, I mean, I guess that's just a justification for them to exist. But in other words, it intrigues me as to how that all came about.
Does the Lincoln Council on Aging coordinate with the Flint Hills Council on the area?
They're
You guys-
saying what we can and cannot do, like, okay, they were very specific on certain things for hiring our manager or coordinator, whatever name you wanna call her, you know.
So they kind of,
And we can call them for advice on different things.
but they're not your boss, or they're not dictating to you what to do, are they? Or are
Not really dictating, but they're giving suggestions on which way to go.
they don't have any authority over you, do they?
Let's put it this way. Do they give you any funding? Do they give you any funding, LCCA?
No.
No. Therefore, they have no jurisdiction whatsoever. The LCCA has been completely, locally, 100% tax funded through the mill levy that was a public vote that ended up in increments of 1 mill and another half and then another half. So it totals to 2 mills, and every year the commission has distributed that money to the LCCA, and they get no other funding. You don't have fundraisers, and you don't have any other resources for which you can gather funding.
In here, they do tell us we can't do certain things to disgrace the whole
County.
basically. Just having, you know.
So now the Lincoln Council on Aging, do you guys distribute money then to the Lincoln Senior Center and the Sylvan Senior Center, correct?
Yes, but the Sylvan Center kind of wants to be their own entire, their own
Entity.
little,
Entity.
over there, we did give them, late last year, $4,000 that they had coming, and my understanding is they would like the commissioners to give their share straight to them instead of having to go through us. That's something that's gotta come up to you, not through me, really.
So I'll
It's
interject
hard
there.
to deal with someone that doesn't wish to come to our meetings.
In the past, the Council on Aging, and first of all, I'd like to clarify, I appreciate what you've done. All the new members to the Council on Aging have been very upfront and very forthcoming with information, with discussion. That is not something that was experienced in the past, okay? And just this past year, you lost your employee, she left without notice, and continued to get her health insurance paid with an automatic withdrawal out of the account for several months. And took her own check at the end of her term and paid herself her vacation and comp time. So that being said, the people that have had to go through this transition, I have a lot of appreciation for you because I know it's been confusing and frustrating.
We still don't know where we are.
Bank statements are lost, paperwork is frazzled. I mean, I understand it's been quite a situation for you. Now that being said, in the past, prior councils have hired attorneys more than 4 times and paid thousands of dollars with our tax money to these attorneys to tell them what they're supposed to be doing as a council. I've attended several of these meetings. I think there was only one attorney hired prior to me that I didn't actually hear what the attorney had to say or read his or her paperwork. And the most recent one basically stated that you do have to comply with open meetings and open records because they are publicly funded and they're appointed by the commission. That sets the precedent for how you have to continue with your paperwork and your meetings, okay? Prior to that, they had hired an attorney out of Ellsworth who clearly said that the Council on Aging has no authority over other groups. Every 501c3 is an independent organization. The Lincoln Senior Center is an independent organization. The Sylvan Senior Center is an independent organization. and the LCCA itself has its own 501(c) status with the IRS. So they're all separate. The fact that the LCCA has been distributing tax money, that is at the sole discretion of this commission. So in years past, the fact that this commission gave 100% of the mill levy to one group, that was this commission's decision. No one else had any influence on that because they can't. We publicly tax for that, and then we choose where to distribute it. Now the question that remains in my mind is, we still do not have the original resolution that says that the public voted this in, and what that charter actually demands as far as how we spend that money. I do have a problem with that. I feel like we're taxing people on a document that doesn't exist, and we haven't really had clear definition on where that money is to go. Because technically, if it's for senior services, anyone who's providing a senior service, including a small card playing organization, could come to the commission and say, we provide this service for seniors, may we have some of that money? And in the past, no one has really sought the money from the commission directly. We have had a lot of issues with former LCCA boards not wanting to disperse all of the money, as we just experienced last year happened to Lincoln, and in many, many years prior happened to Sylvan. They barely ever received 100% of their funding that they requested. So we had the LCCA getting upwards of $75,000 and distributing as little as $0 to $3,000 to one of the two senior centers. So it's been very volatile. And I would say at this point, the idea that the senior centers could come directly to the commission is very viable. I would think that any group could come to the commission when we tax everyone for that money.
So basically, you're saying the money should just go to the senior centers and we don't have a council on aging.
Well, I didn't verbalize that, but my
That's-
experience with the
I'm sorry, that's what I'm feeling from you.
Okay, so my experience with the Council on Aging is that the Council on Aging has spent upwards of $30,000 to provide a job to someone.
But that is over with.
Well, you're still requesting close to the same amount of money that you've always spent, according to this. Your new budget was 40, let's see, no wait. Okay, so last 2018 budget request, well, actually, this is your balance sheet, 4775. We don't have a budget in here. I have your budget though, because you brought it in.
Last week.
I think I will address the Flint Hills Council on Aging. Prior to 2018 budget, the county paid the $1,404 to the Flint Hills. We budgeted in the general fund. We decided that in 2018 that we would let the Council on Aging pay that, right? And we moved that to $0 in our budget.
No.
Yeah, that's what it says
Yes
here.
and no. The 1404 is for the Senior Care Act funding, and you move that to come out of the health department because
Was it the health department? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what that even pays for because it's less this year. Now, several years ago, we used to pay 100% of the administration fee. And then when the Council on Aging, and I could look back and probably see the history because it's been since 2000, but when the Council on Aging was getting 2 mills and having the large bank account that they had, the question was did we really need to be paying for that? And I think at some point in time, they started halving it, and they paid for half of it. I want to say about 2 years ago, maybe 3, or possibly 4 years ago, because time goes fast, they started picking up 100% of that.
Okay, that's what I saw.
So we used to pay like 25 something
Yeah, right.
in.
Yes,
So-
that's right. Yeah, but we did move those out of county general into
Yes.
mill levy.
Okay, so it went through the health department because of what you said. There are people that will come to do assessments
Yes.
that can
No,
contact.
No, that's the Senior Care Act money.
But does that still go to Area Agency on Aging?
Yes.
Because they're the ones that collect
But
that.
that's for some kind of a federal program. It used to be that, and I know I've had Lenona come in and explain this to you, what they do, but it used to be that you could get a certain senior
Yeah.
enrolled in a certain program and they could go out and do home health services. but then we were paying into the Senior Care Act funding, but Ladonna wasn't able to get anybody off of her waiting list. So she questioned, why are we paying into the Senior Care Act funding? But it was used as match monies to the federal government to get services. And if I understand or remember the conversation correctly, people were being added, but they were being added kind of in a county basis, kind of rotating. We just never ever had anybody added. Since then, the health department doesn't provide services, and I think that Senior Care Act funding reduced.
Was that
down
their
this year.
only health care provider, or did they, I'm sorry, home health care, was that their only resource for home health care, or were they doing all home health care? Then
No, I think they had some other, they had county funds, but
Okay.
they also had some other grant funds.
Okay. I found your budget. It's for 40,000 total, the one that you brought in. And so that's pretty similar to what you've requested in years past as far as collecting a total of 70 or more, distributing 30 to one senior center, 3 to the other, and then spending 40 on your own overhead. So yes, it's very similar.
I'm sorry, I was under the impression before it was closer to 70,000, someone had,
That was in years prior.
Yeah.
okay.
This is
Yeah.
this year's. This is your
Yeah.
budget for this year.
But you says it's the same as previous years, and I'm thinking where's
Your
the
own personal expenses as
Okay.
far as, here, I'll show you. If you collect 70,000 and you give 30 to the Lincoln Senior Center, now you have 40. And
Okay.
you've always spent, the LCCA has always spent around 40 to 50,000 on itself out of the total money. And then, and what I had asked you when you brought this in was what your balance is in your account now.
Yeah, and I gave you the last time some wild, I had too many figures in my head and I couldn't keep
Should
track.
be on the balance sheet.
Yep, I see it here. It's 47,775.
And you put 25 of that in the CD.
Yes,
yes.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So the history of it is that in years prior, when they had collected all 70 to 80,000, they had distributed the money in certain increments to the senior centers, had their own overhead expenses, and then banked the rest of it. And so they, at one time, they had upwards of $100,000 in the bank. And when that was addressed, we had asked them to spend that on those, on their own expenses before collecting any more money. So last year we withheld, which we still currently have 14,500, if my numbers are right in my head, from 2018 that we did not distribute. And so then Lincoln Senior Center didn't get their 8,500.
Yeah.
That was part of their budget that was worked into 2018. And then what was Sylvan's 4,000 even from 2018?
That's what we gave them, and
That was from 17 though, I think, what you approved.
wasn't
Right
it,
at the
yeah.
end of the year, there was such.
And someone else had said that it was already given to them. Nancy and I went all through the books and agreed with them. We could not find where it was given to them, so we wrote them a check for 4,000.
That was from their unfulfilled budget from 2017.
17.
Yes,
Okay.
and
So now they still have 18 remaining, and so does the Lincoln Senior Center, and we have that, what I was proposing before, to split between the two, we have that in the bank. Is pretty, I mean, we
So
were expecting
still owe Sylvan Senior Center.
from
We
18.
still- See, we did not realize that.
No, they don't. We held the money.
But wait a minute. We held money to give to the Lincoln Council on Aging. They had upwards of 50,000 in the bank.
money. You asked earlier how we felt about having to go through the Council on Aging to get our funding. I have not been involved in the senior center long enough to, but I do know the history because I was involved in some of that. And number one, we definitely have to be accountable because we're using mill levy money. We do have, the Lincoln Senior Center does have a private account that is our money. We have been fortunate to have a man and his wife who have been extremely generous to the senior center And so yes, it looks like we have all this extra money stored up, but like Jolene said, we've got work we've got to do in the back too, and that's where because we own our building, that's where that money will come from, to do the front, to hopefully get the back so it's safer. Yeah, I didn't mind being accountable to the Council on Aging, but no longer than I've been on, and I say thank you to the people who are willing to still serve, because I think things can be turned around, but the target kept moving. And I know Al Joe came and sat in on a meeting with us one day, and somebody made a remark about, well, you have to meet this list of requirements before you can get your money, and I said, I haven't seen a list of requirements. So they finally found one and ran it off for us. Al Joe had never seen this list of requirements. They made this list up. Someone did. And it was about this long. And
That's
then
over
after
done with.
that,
That's before you.
it
We
was
understand
before
that.
you. That's
We
what I
understand.
said.
This is
That's
prior.
what I'm trying to help you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that you guys are willing to serve, and I trust that you will get it straightened out. But no, we don't mind being accountable, and we don't mind working through the Council on Aging. But number one, they've got to quit changing the target, which I think they will. But we have to be accountable, whether it's to the Council on Aging or whether it's to the commissioners directly, for how we take your mill levy money or our county money and spend it. So we don't mind being accountable, but there has to be some sensibility. So if you commissioners choose to keep giving the money to the Council on Aging and letting them distribute it, we don't have a problem with that, as long as it's done correctly. And we can't be having all this infighting, we can't be having all these, and I think that's history, and thank God it is.
That is history.
I had a comment.
I was just gonna say, on the Council on Aging balance sheet, I think they have about $45,000. I'm pulling this out of my head.
Yeah.
Today. Okay, at the end of the year, they cashed in, I believe, 2 CDs, is that right?
Yeah,
One
there
for
was-
5, one for 15,
Yeah.
and that is the residual of that money. So that's part of the spend down amount, that's all.
They had gone down to nothing in their checking, and you're saying they cashed into their
Yes.
CDs,
Yes.
and now that's what's in their checking.
Yes.
I understand. And I'll just go back to what I had said earlier. Some of you were in here when we were discussing a road situation earlier. The commission does not have any kind of requirements set forth to receive this money. Therein lies the problem. We collect this money, we collect 2 mills from all of you every year.
No, we don't. We collect 75,000.
Well, I'm sorry, since this was brought to light after years and years of people in Sylvan pushing, since it was brought to light, the commission finally decreased the dollar amount of funding. But it is available to be 2 mills that is taxed. So we collect this money from the citizens every year, and then we give it based on no restrictions whatsoever. We don't even have a resolution that says if you're going to receive this money, you have to be a 501c3. Or if you're going to receive this money, you have to have some kind of viable elderly service. We have not set forth any guidelines as far as why or how we're going to distribute this money. That personally is a problem in my view, because then it does create that sense of accountability that you're talking about. If you come before the commission, we say, are you a 501c3? Do you provide elderly services? And then have you given us your budget and your financial year-end report? Yes, 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 check, 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 then we distribute the money. It's really not that difficult of a process. But in years prior, it's just been hand the lump sum to one random group and then allow them to make these hoops and moving targets for other groups to try to capture that money. And so I would like to see that stop indefinitely. I mean, it's really been a problem for the Sylvan Senior Center, because I was involved in that, trying to aim at that target, and it was very frustrating. I really think that the funds should be distributed individually, and I like that each group brought a budget this year. However, what we need to address is that we only have $75,000, plus what we have held over from 2018, and we have requests that total much greater than that dollar amount. As for the legitimacy of the Council on Aging, I will say that some of the question in my mind is, we're spending $40,000 for a group to exist, and let's just say we take what you have on your budget, mileage for delivering meals. I mean, that can be done through the Sylvan, through the Lincoln Senior Center, because they are the meal provider. I mean, you guys actually have the program within your domain. It's the meal program is not a council on aging thing. It's a Lincoln Senior Center thing, and I think that's been a big misunderstanding in the past.
But they don't have the money to pay for it.
No,
Well, it's
actually,
all-
most of the meal program is from North Central Flint Hills area on aging. The money that, goes to North Central Flint Hills, and,
Now,
we have
North
to,
Central Flint Hills will pay if there's 15 people in Barnard.
To one
Yeah,
particular
to-
to, of
to-
delivery.
Yes, they'll
But they
pay.
won't because we don't qualify for that.
I was on the LCC board on that question about the number of meals and how far they'll go. 2 meals per mile. If you can't provide 2 meals per mile, 15 miles be 30 meals before they'll pay. That's what the
One
stipulation
way,
was.
if it's a 15-mile trip one
One
way,
way,
you
as
have to
I
have 2
understand it,
meals that you're
You
delivering
have to
per
have 2
mile.
meals within each mile.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be within each mile, but distance of times 2.
And I understand what's in this budget request. Basically, you're saying you would like $3,700 to pay the drivers to drive those meals.
The one after, and I have no authority, mind you, I just slogged through a lot of bank statements. You were talking about the legitimacy of the Council on Aging. The one thing the Council on Aging does do is provide kind of an overarching organization for the county. It's not just Lincoln, it's Barnard, it's Westfall, it's Beverly. And I don't know that there are programs in place now, but I'm sure there are elderly people there who might take advantage of something that was developed. That's where I see the legitimacy.
And that's kind of our aim this year, is to reach out to those seniors all over the county and see what they need as far as services, programs, activities, and want to help them.
So if they do have services, programs, and activities that they'd like to do, who's going to be facilitating that?
We are hoping Becky, the girl that we have
So the
hired,
Lincoln
and-
Senior Center, though.
Yes.
No,
Council on
okay,
Aging.
she's the senior center manager. Then we
She's
have
our
hired her for 3.5 hours a day for the Lincoln Council, and to be helping people, finding resources for them. Okay? And it was suggested this all should be put on the health department, and the health department does not wish for that.
Who
Instead
wanted
of-
it to go to the health department? The senior
Flint
center?
Hill, no,
Oh,
Flint
Flint
Hills had suggested,
Okay.
that possibly they take over, but.
Is that how other counties do it? Is that why they're
Oh,
suggesting
heavens.
that?
Some have, some, they gave us such a list of different people, as a lot of these have retired. They're trying different options in different counties. And on the transportation, I think that was on, I don't know if that was only Barnard, but we also have a coupon deal with the bus service, the county bus, bad weather to go to, like the high rise, and bring them, and we'll pick up the car.
Yes.
Excuse me,
No.
Alexis. I also see with the Council on Aging, and, you know, I mean, they still to have a coordinator to offer more programs, you know, and earlier I've talked with Sylvan people about this, you know. I mean, we do programs. This last week we had one on shingles. I know in the past I've spoke on, with some from Sylvan on having something on dementia and Alzheimer's, because there's ones over there and there's ones over here. We're seeing that. Also, if, you know, if the council can reach out to Beverly or to those, we find that one of the things with us, we're a link to, there's so many that are maybe in our high rise or living by themselves, that their children all live away. You know, when we deliver, we're maybe the only person that some of them see, you know, and many times we've been the link, you know, if we don't reach them, we call the family, and the family, you know. So
You do.
the
At the
senior center, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's for our meal program,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I see
That
that.
is your main program, the way I
Yeah,
understand it. Do you
That.
have other programs for outreach?
If we have exercise, and that is something else we've, in the past, when I've talked to, you know, Mike and Valerie and some from Sylvan, you know, we could do joint programs, you know, and, you know, sometimes I think Sylvan has maybe a younger clientele sometimes than we do, but we can all, I mean, you know, my vision is to help the county. I mean, our population is getting older, and we have many, you know, it used to be your child lived 30 miles down the road. Well, that's not the case anymore, you know, so
And see, that's kind of our vision too.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
reaching out to people all over the county, the elderly.
So, like the Lincoln Council on Aging, you guys, do you do similar services like the Lincoln Senior Center? Like for, you have programs, right? I know you have
We
meals like
do.
you, but then you have programs.
Yeah.
But you have programs too, right?
Well, we've not had in the past
Oh.
as such. There's only
We're
been maybe a couple.
trying to
Trying to.
expand this.
Well, I was gonna say, some things maybe you could combine efforts, instead of you having a program for exercise, and you have one for exercise, maybe why don't you put stuff together like that? Well, maybe that's not practical, I don't know, but,
And
Mr. Kratky, you
I
know,
just have a comment on that. One thing is, the senior centers usually have the manpower to put on the programs. They've got the people.
okay.
And so that's where the primary source is at.
And the Council on Aging.
And they have the actual buildings,
Right,
the
yeah.
facility to do
Okay.
things in, yes.
Yeah, I was just curious if you could combine.
But your
yeah.
council on aging office is where a lot of people go for help with their health insurance. A lot of people go there for help
Okay.
with their income tax.
Okay,
the
so
senior
they
citizens.
provide a
So the
separate,
council on aging to me is a very important
okay.
piece of the puzzle for the
So,
senior.
so they provide separate services besides
Yes.
the senior center?
Yes.
So
Oh,
they're
yes.
really,
Yeah.
but that's what I was wondering.
Yes.
What does everybody do? And I don't know all that, I'm new here
Well,
and,
she makes
Yeah.
a good point. There's health insurance counseling, which is called SHIC. And it's a
Yes.
volunteer program. The
Right.
North Central Flint Hills Area Agency on Aging will train anyone who
Right.
wants to do it. So we don't really have to pay for that.
Right.
But we've paid for it dearly in the past. I mean,
Yeah.
we've paid thousands and thousands of dollars to have that service here. But in all reality, we can have anyone do that. And I
Yes.
think there's been very little awareness about the need for it and the coaching and the training for it. Because that can be facilitated through anyone at any time. I mean,
Right.
someone could volunteer
And they
to come to
have-
the courthouse and meet with people once a week if they wanted to.
now, it used to be several day class. Now, I was told it was one day. After
Oh,
I
you can get the training in one day? Is that
Yeah.
what you're saying?
that's what I was told.
Your
Right
training
now,
takes
but
more than that.
in a couple months, I'm trying to go.
yes, Mr.
One more comment on the SHIC and the taxes. Sylvan Senior Center has an individual come to do free the homestead tax for our seniors. Plus, we had a SHIC from North Central Flint Hills Council on Aging. She came out, spent the day, and went through the seniors to set up their SHIC program.
Did
It
she?
cost nothing.
Did she come from Salina?
Manhattan.
Oh, she came from
It
Manhattan.
was actually Karen Mays.
Oh, it was Karen.
And so those
Okay.
services are out there without
Uh-huh.
paying somebody to do it.
And they'll come to your senior center.
Right.
And also, just one thing, I don't think we advertise it much yet, but we do have a dementia and Alzheimer group that's formed, and they've had one meeting the
Think
first
Fridays.
Fridays of the month, and they'll have the next one on March. And it's a lady out of, I think Swan,
Okay.
that's facilitating it.
And you have this at your senior center? No.
So I'd like to address the money, because I think that's why we're here. I mean, the commission really only has ultimate control over the money and not really what you do. Although I like what I'm hearing, and I think most of you know that I've been active. I started an exercise program in Sylvan that's still going, even without me being there. So I really do see the value in providing services and getting your local elderly involved and out of their home and participating and communicating. I mean, I do have a passion for that. So I am not by any way negating the value of providing services. I mean, I truly believe that it's a good and noble cause. From a bird's eye view, when we look at the dollars, there are only so many. So we need to decide what's important and how we distribute those funds. Like I said before, the 3 entities have requested in total, just the Lincoln Senior Center and the Council on Aging have requested more than what the $75,000 is. Okay, so we have to decide what's going to happen to the distribution of funds. Now I know Sylvan Senior Center has done an awful lot of fundraising because I've been a part of that, working the concession stand and doing things like that. So they've helped self-fund. I think, you know, you've probably, in the Lincoln Senior Center, you've probably used some of your other funds that you've generated through donations
Yes.
and things like that to help facilitate some of your expenses. Now, the Council on Aging has done no other outreach as far as funding. They've always been 100% funded by the county. I don't know how that's going to continue. I don't know what the future holds for that, and I think the 3 of us really need to have a moment where we decide what's going to be important. And I just want to point out, you know, I don't want you to overanalyze the use of my word legitimacy on the Council on Aging, because what I'm looking at is the fact that when I look at the 2 entities that are operating out of the same building, we have double phone bills. We have one paying rent to the other. You know, we have office supplies for both. We have insurance for both, a separate insurance policy. And, you know, some of these are small fees, but they all add up. When I look at the Council on Aging, you have $3,700 for delivering meals, $5,000 for homemaker services, and $1,200 for bus passes. I will point out that the bus is already subsidized by county money. We pay into it every year. So by you purchasing bus passes with county money that we've already subsidized, it's kind of a revolving door there with the same funds. But regardless, what I'm getting at is 9, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have $9,900 worth of potential output. $3,700 of that is just paying someone to drive their car. So $6,200 is between the bus passes and homemaker services of potentially giving people services. So $6,200 out of your $40,000 for the LCCA is really what's being put back into the community, given to the taxpayers. To me, that's a little bit of a problem. The overhead is so high, you know. Now the wages, I understand. You want someone there to facilitate some of these things. But a lot of it is, in my mind, duplicative of what's happening in the senior centers, because you already have, like Mike said, the manpower there, and you already have the facilities there. I mean, the LCCA tried to reach out and have their own office there for a little while, and I think that was pretty much disastrous.
That was very.
So
So maybe we need to take that back and redo it, because we want to be sure and pay a person there, you know. But if some of this other stuff is duplicates, see, we're going from what was done in the past.
I know.
So,
I know. And that's the only way you can move forward is to try
Yeah.
to, I understand that. And like I said, I'm not trying to be critical of the validity of offering services. I'm just saying I see 9,900 total potential output of 40,000. The rest of it is all what you, does everyone know what I mean by the word overhead expenses?
Yeah.
It's a cost of doing business, you know, so each of you have to have a bond. Now we're, out of our mill levy money, we're paying for 3 people to be bonded instead of 1 or 2, because you have 1 from each senior center and you have 1 for the Council on Aging, because you all have a treasurer. So you get bonded as a treasurer. So now we have 3 fees for treasury bonding. You know, it's just, to me, that money is not going back to the people as much as it is paying to have an office. And that's a concern.
But I would say, just in the discussions we've had, Nancy, after this process got started, I can see a lot of changes that have been made in the way that budget is, and I'm wondering if a chance to rework it and reflect the new salary might be worthwhile.
Well, and I can see, I mean, you're only paying out $12,000 in wages for the year.
yeah.
So you're expecting someone to basically facilitate what the Council on Aging was paying out $30,000 plus for in the past.
Right.
I mean, that's impressive and good, and that's definitely a move in the right direction.
Okay, you said on the bus passes, you're already funding it,
Mhm.
but we have to pay, so where do we come up with the money to pay the bus passes?
Okay, so in the city of Lincoln, anyone can go anywhere from point A to point B for $2. In the county of Lincoln, anyone can ride the bus from point A to point B for $3. Is it free? I think it's $3. It's only like $1 more. And then if you want to take a trip to Salina or
We know,
Tesket
we're
or
just
something, you
talking
pay
about
mileage.
for meals that to make sure that these people are getting a decent meal and that they're getting to visit whatever program might be that day. We were paying the bus, but you say the county already is. Someone didn't have the $2, so they walk and they're slipping and falling on the ice, and they don't want. Yes, they have the option of getting it, but they want.
Well-
Want to come and.
Oh no, I understand what you're saying. If someone doesn't have their $2, you're basically allowing them to ride
Yes.
it for free. And I'm saying the reason why they only have to pay $2 is because we're already paying to have that service provided so cheaply. But I've already talked to Jerry because he was in here last week. You guys only pay like $30 or $40 a month for people to get free bus passes. So the $1,200, I mean, I guess that's over and above the $30 a month for sure. 70% more.
I think we need to move on, and I think we need to distribute some money, and I've done some figuring. Don, we have about 14,000 left,
I think it's 14.5.
Yes.
and we had about 42 available today. 45.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. I'm wondering why you're proposing to to project the spending now when we just had someone say that they were willing to go back and reconfigure their budget.
I think we need to distribute money that on a basis, a regular basis, and I think distributions were made, most of the distributions were made in January. I think it's time to distribute these.
That's interesting that you say that. That's interesting that you say that because we withheld money from last year and I proposed to distribute it last week and you refused. You said just because we have it doesn't mean we have to spend it. Those were your words.
That's true.
So now you're changing your tune.
No, I'm not. I'm not changing my tune.
Yeah,
Your
you
motion
definitely
was
are.
specific to split it half and half, and I disagreed with that too.
Yes, I agreed, or I proposed that we split it half and half between the
Don?
senior centers.
45,750 is available for this
Okay.
year.
All right.
14,500 for a total of 60,250.
Today, on this first distribution, and I think we will probably make another distribution, or should make another distribution in July, I would propose we distribute 10,000 to the Sylvan Senior Center, 18 to the Lincoln, and 24 to the Lincoln Council on Aging, knowing that they have a lot of money, and we may not make a distribution to you in July. But I think that's going to be about $52,000, which is a little over 60% of the 75,000 that we've collected, that we will collect.
Would you mind repeating your figures?
I said 10,000 to Sylvan Senior, 18 to Lincoln, and 24 to the Council on Aging.
And what are those based on? What, is that a percentage, or how did you figure those dollar amounts?
I basically, yes, I kind of did what was going on in the previous years and kind of rounded those to what I thought. I also looked at the budgets of LC, of Lincoln Council on Aging. I looked at your budget, looked at the budget at Lincoln Senior Center. I project that there would be a total of 16,000 to the Sylvan Senior Center by the end of the year, and 28,000 to the, at least 28,000 to the Lincoln Senior Center, and then there will be some money left there that if we need to work on the Council on Aging, that's okay, or we can distribute it more to the senior centers.
Okay, so you're proposing that we fund in 2019 $28,000 to the Lincoln Senior Center total. Is that what
I project that could be there, yes.
28 out of 48. Where will they come up with the next?
I think they got 23 last year, didn't they?
23,
Yes.
yeah,
Out of 31.
yeah.
So
So
that's
we
my
were
question. Is
85
that's picking up what we're gonna get from last year? Or?
I just took the pot is at 59,000 approximately right now.
So
The
8,000.
pot, the 14,000 from, that's still in the account, and the 40-some thousand that we got through taxes in December.
So the senior center was short 8 last
Yeah.
year.
And we
Yeah.
need to address that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what I'm.
Yeah, you know,
We
Where's
need
that
to
kind of
address
work?
that, because we did not realize that.
Yeah.
yeah. I,
So you
we
still
can't make
potentially
up
have
everybody's money.
12,000 to distribute, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12,500 potentially to distribute.
Oh, you're saying that should come from the Council on Aging.
I'm saying that.
The 8,000 from
8,
last year.
8, 5, and 4 is what the 2017 was not funded for Sylvan. So you, as a new board, did retroactively fund them 2017. Now, 2018 was not fully funded for either
Right.
entity. So it would be 8, 5, and 4,000 is what is owed from 2018 from the budgets that they turned into LCCA.
I thought you paid them.
Yes, we paid,
What was, okay,
I have to look back at the minutes, but we did pay
We
in
did pay it.
October or September or October, we paid
Sylvan.
we did make a payment to them.
to both organizations.
Oh yes,
both?
we did make to both.
To even the Lincoln?
Because we kept 28,000 and we distributed about, well, we have 14,500 left, so.
Yes.
So we don't owe them, either one.
Well,
If
it's
you
an
paid them.
interesting concept because we already gave the money to you guys that you had in a savings account. So when you didn't fund their budgets fully, we withheld the next year's payments and then diverted that money. So we have set a precedent making direct payments to the senior centers at this point, which
Okay.
I think is legitimate. But I have myself confused on what our payments were. Dawn, you're looking that
So
up
we
right
need
now.
to know if we still owe them. We need to know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somewhere along, somebody's got to fund it, or if
I
they did
mean,
fund it.
technically, if you approved their budgets, which you had, then you owe them that anyhow. And any money that we had withheld and then redistributed was ours to do separately. Just saying, in an overall concept. But if we were doing that intentionally to retroactively pay what had been withheld from the LCCA, then I guess we covered that payment out of what we didn't distribute to the LCCA.
Okay?
Well, the
I'm-
mill levy money was intended for senior services, not to sit in a bank account. So the fact that there is money sitting in bank accounts being unspent on any senior services whatsoever, as a taxpayer, that concerns me, because we don't need little fiefdoms with hoards of money stacked up in the keep room.
I agree.
It should be spent on senior services, period. Council on Aging, the budget that they're presenting, actually dilutes direct services to seniors, because the most direct route to senior centers, the Council on Aging, up until this point, has only been giving, paying someone to provide services. It makes me wonder, what happens if that 40,000 that they're requesting is actually divvied up among the organizations that are actually providing an actual service? The paying for meals to be delivered, that could actually come out of the Lincoln Senior Center budget. For example, if Sylvan has people that they want meals delivered to, they could be paying for those meals to be delivered. I'm not certain that the Council on Aging, even though these are noble people who are doing something, they're brainstorming all kinds of great ideas, but they're struggling to find a purpose. I don't know, as a taxpayer, I'm not really sure that our purpose should be to fund a specific job for that organization to fulfill its mission. I think that those funds are better served at the senior center level where they're already providing services.
But there's people out there in the county that don't attend the senior centers
But the
that
senior
we're
cen-
trying to.
But what I'm saying is the senior centers themselves are in a better, because they've got a bigger population of people coming, they're more likely to know about Mrs. Such-and-so or Mr. Such-and-so who needs the services.
I think there's communities that we're not reaching that I think the Council on Aging does reach. Also, there are calls that come in that are needing things, and so I think the Council on Aging might hear from somebody before the senior center would hear. Countywide, I think, you know. I think if they're needing help or their, you know, loved one has passed away, if they have handicap, they need information for any number of things. They don't call the senior center, they call the Council on Aging.
I think what she's saying is, why can't they? Why can't the senior center? It basically what she's proposing is, you take the money. Let's use the meal deliveries for an example. You take the $3,700 for meal deliveries, and you request it in the Lincoln Senior Center budget, and then you pay someone because you already have a board and a treasurer and a bank account. And to have a separate bank account to pay someone to do something, she's saying you're having a separate organization pay someone. Any organization can pay someone, and you already have an organization, is what she's saying.
Yeah, but, and maybe it's just what people are used to, but I mean, you know, since...
Okay, the manager at times, people they don't know how to balance a checkbook. They get these letters from Medicare, Social Security. They don't understand them, so they bring them there, and she sits and reads and figures out, you know, this is a piece of junk, or yes, we have to deal with it. It's someone where a lot of these people kind of look, the senior center is a fun thing. You know, I go play cards, I play bingo, I do that. Now I'll go to the LCCA and they'll help me with my bills or mail or whatever.
I think both things are, you know, needed, but could we consolidate things where put stuff together, still provide those services, but save money? Like Alexis just said, we have overhead, double overhead a lot of times. And could we consolidate some of that? Still provide your services, still be a senior center, still be Council on Aging, but save some money. Isn't that possible?
I'll give you another example. You have wages for $12,000, and that's going to go to Becky, who already gets paid by the senior center. So what you do is you take the $12,000, you budget it into the senior center's budget, and you pay Becky the extra $12,000, and she's still there after hours to do Council on Aging work after she's worked as the meal front desk person for the senior center. That's the concept.
But that's the way it is now, I believe.
I cannot say
That's the way it is
we
now.
can go back and reevaluate and discuss this, but I cannot say, yes, we'll do this.
Oh yeah, you have to talk to your board.
Yeah, and I think we appreciate all your services, everybody here. Sylvan, Lincoln Senior Centers, and you, Lincoln Council on Aging. But maybe we could, like I just said, consolidate some things where we have 3 different entities now with 3 different budgets, 3 different, you got employee, they're gonna have an employee, it's the same person, right, Becky?
Yes.
But that may not be forever.
No, I know what you're saying.
It is right now,
Yeah.
but it may
Well,
not
but-
always
I'll
be.
give you another example. If someone calls in and they want their SHIC counseling done, and Becky is going to do it, and they're able to travel, where do they come? To the senior center.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah.
So
Would you want to drive clear to Salina or wherever?
No.
You're not here.
What I'm getting at is the fact that the senior center building is still providing
Oh,
the
okay, I see
services.
what you're saying.
They're still housing the services. Just because another agency is paying for a separate phone bill, a separate internet, a separate banking account, a separate office supplies and postage and officer's bond and filing fee, just because another organization is paying all those doesn't mean that it's happening off-site. So, and then someone, if that person needs to travel, Becky is still located in the senior center, and if she takes her car and drives to Beverly, she's still working out of the senior center. I think that's what we're talking
Okay,
about.
we didn't understand exactly all the things you have brought up.
Mhm.
We have a meeting next Tuesday. We will discuss this and could come back with
That's
something
great. Yeah.
next month.
Okay, that sounds good.
That's the best I can say. And then Sylvan wants to be their own entity, so you can discuss with them the part they want.
Okay, maybe we should just hold off until you reevaluate kind of the direction that you're going, so that we know, if we're going to separate expenses or not, or what you can combine with the senior center, since it already houses your group and your projects there. So, and we need to be moving on. I think Michael, is he out in the hallway? Thank you.
Can I
Yes,
ask
thank
one
you.
question?
Sure.
Okay, so in September, you guys approved Sylvan to get 6,000, Lincoln to get 8,000. And I believe those checks were all cut at mid-month. So they would have each senior center.
So we had 28.5 withheld, and now we have 14.5 because we distributed 14. But we didn't make a note as to what. Sylvan, do you have an answer for that as far as what we thought we were covering for you as far as unpaid?
You were covering 2018
Okay.
because 2017 was a different issue.
Did you receive any money from the LCCA in 18?
I saw one check on a deposit said $4,000.
But that was the 17
That was
payment.
17.
So the 8 that we paid was 18, and they didn't pay you anything for 18.
No, we received nothing from
That's-
LCCA for 18.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah.
I
So
thought
then we
you
did cover 18.
You gave, since them direct, it didn't come
Yeah,
through
but-
us.
but basically
That was
said-
my understanding. It wasn't coming through us, that you were paying
It's a confusing.
each one. Is
Correct.
that right?
We did.
Okay, so I don't have to worry about coming up with money to them. Good. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused.
No, that's okay. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
In the bank account.
You got your motion, or did you make a
I
motion?
didn't make one,
Oh.
I just made a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm confused if there's
I thought
anything.
we needed to distribute some money.
No, I didn't miss that either, but I've never seen such a confusing thing in my life as this council on aging combined with this senior center, which is so good. I never seen such a mishmash of confusion in my life.
Well, it went unbridled for a long time.
Tonight, I was wondering if I was gonna call you. Okay, yeah, on hospital.
Hello.
Thanks.
Thank you for waiting.
Probably be a blizzard, you know. We might have to, can't stay there all night. Okay, see you.
See if you're awake. Yeah. Good morning.
First thing is, I will start off with some correspondence that we received. We received a letter signed by several citizens, and they're concerned about some of the road work that's been done in the route that entails Golden Belt Valley and Indiana Townships. They're very concerned about the work that's been done there and the lack of oversight by this department. I'll let you read the letter. I already read it during the beginning of the meeting for correspondence, but maybe you could just give us some guidance on that in the future.
So we can have a copy of this then?
But we don't have a copy. I'll get one.
we going on, or what are we doing?
I think they were reading the letter as far as, or Mr. Howe's not gonna read it.
Well, I thought he was gonna take it with him so they could respond to it.
Well, I'll make them a copy.
That'll work.
You can continue it. I'm gonna sit in the back.
I don't know if you guys all received this or not, but this came from the interim secretary of transportation on the
I'll give you a copy here. Leslie.
Thank you.
potentially some new funding. The good thing is they are looking to reinstate the Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Program, which is a good thing for counties across the state. And as far as the new cost share program, I'm not real familiar with that, but that is something that should benefit us here at the county. I know the meetings leading up to that was the Transportation Task Force was a very key factor in getting that accomplished, and I did attend one of those meetings and I spoke at one of them, and our Kansas County Highway Association, got to give them kudos for backing this pretty strongly throughout the whole state at all those meetings. So that's a little bit of positive for funding there.
How would you go about, do you have to write a grant or something to request funds for something like this? How would that happen, or maybe you don't know yet?
Well, like the Kansas Local Bridge Improvement Program, we've had that once before, and I believe that program was an 80-20 split, if I remember right, but it did include closing some fracture critical bridges in order to receive that funding.
Yes,
so,
I think typically KDOT will send out an email or something.
Yeah, they'll open it up for
call
for projects.
Request. So
yes.
If you want to apply for something, and then you would have to, I see.
Yeah, they typically have an application that you have to fill out and provide some details. And
okay, sure. So is this just a proposal thing in the works, or is this going to be pretty assured that?
I think that it's
it has to be approved by Congress or the Senate and the Assembly, or right, Kansas. Or,
yes.
Yeah.
It's part of the proposed budget. So if the
Budget.
budget doesn't pass.
Okay.
Right.
okay. And last spring, I think it was, we started, Tanner and I was doing some discussing on our landfill as far as the C&D when we first heard about a potential repower out at the wind farm. And it re-sparked our conversation. They are going to be doing a repower. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but they are planning on having it completed in 2020 on Smoky Hill phase 1 and 2. I don't have exact numbers of how many units they're going to do, if they're doing them all or what yet, but it sparked our conversation on what those old blades are going to be, what they're going to do with them. Well, what it all boils down to is, I believe Lincoln County would be smart just to reject the waste, which we have the right to do. I don't think we'd want 500 to 600 blades and the responsibility of them.
150 foot long by 6 to 8 foot in diameter at the one end.
Are they worth anything? Can we sell them to somebody?
Nobody wants them. Nobody.
I think they're a wooden kind of skeleton inside baffle, and then they got like a fiberglass on the outside.
So they're just gonna put them in landfills?
I think they're trying to figure out
what they're gonna do with them, how they're gonna get it.
You'd think they could recycle them for some reason.
What I've studied on it is they can be recycled, but the process is very toxic and costs more than what it is just to build a new one. They're just, and one of the biggest setbacks for those is actually the transportation of them to and from.
Yeah, it's a pain. Yeah, they're so long. They have to have special trailers and all that. Yeah.
Permitting and
right.
KDOT.
No, I don't really want, or I don't.
I don't either. I don't think.
You know, and I don't know if they would make an offer to a local landowner, and next thing you know, we got a boneyard of them in our backyard. You know, that is one thing I fear, because I know it's going to be costly for them to get rid of him one way or another, so it may be cheaper for them just to approach a landowner and become a boneyard. So I don't know if there's any way without zoning that some of that stuff could ever be addressed, but I want you guys to be aware that that's a concept I think that could be a possibility.
Is there any KDH&E, is they have any
We're going to do some more
regulations?
checking.
I think we need to check with them and make sure, because that could be a problem if they start deciding to pay a farmer to store them suckers.
I've done a little bit of looking, but I did find out that Ford County, you know, the Spearville, they have not done a repower yet. What other county? But they're wondering if maybe Gray County, it's the oldest one in the state. But he does not, the individual I visited with did not believe that they've even done a repower. So we could be the first to see a repower.
What? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I think it behooves us to check with KDH.
Yeah.
And make sure that if they have some kind of regulation. If they don't, we may need to do something.
What consists of a repower? Is just taking the blades off and putting on new ones?
Blades and potentially a whole new generator.
Yeah, that's
You know, they're gonna be able to up their output with modern technology. You know, those are like 12, 13 years old already.
It'd be a major job then, huh?
Oh yeah,
For
you
them.
know, we'll have to seek out a road maintenance agreement. You know, they're going to be bringing lots of large loads across the roads and stuff like that.
That's about
So,
right. 20 years is what they told us the first time.
complete lifespan, yes.
Do they renegotiate with us a new web fund contracts and stuff?
I don't know how all that goes.
If there's an increase in the output, there will be. There's a.
That was already agreed.
It's in there, yeah. There's something in there for an increase if the capacity increases.
Okay. So maybe, we don't know.
But within that discussion, we started thinking and did some looking that the property the county has across from the landfill is, I believe, was there 40 acres there, and 2 cells have been designed. We are currently filling cell 2 at the moment. We had some discussion about possible borrow pit, so
here's,
if we needed some borrow dirt, we could use it.
there's the cell.
Instead of the landfill buying dirt from farmers and stuff like that, since we have the property and the dirt there, would it be cheaper for us to, you know, take some of that land and just use it for our own fill on the C&D pit? And, you know, there's several things to look at there, and Kirkham Michael has a landfill gentleman that we've done a little bit of visiting with on it, and he said that we may want to look at developing that entire property and knowing what we want to do with the whole thing and how it would lay out as far as future cells and everything else. I know that when it was originally done in 2002, the thoughts were that those were some pretty huge cells and it would take 25, 30 years to fill one of them up. And we're already on number 2 after 15, 17 years. You know, so I don't know. It's something that you guys might want to think about and see if you want to find out what the total usable part of that property was if it was to be developed for C&D and or landfill or borrow area and stuff like that.
Like Michael said, yeah, the current plans, they show cell 1, which I believe is closed. Cell 2, where they're dumping.
Cell 2's closed.
Cell 2's closed. Okay, cell 2's closed. Cell 1 is where they're putting.
No. You're right. You're right.
Cell 1 is closed.
It's upside down there.
Okay, and then so cell 2, they're putting material into cell 2. It looks like they had a future cell number 3 proposed right here. But there's really only survey data for right around these 2 cells here. So I didn't know if, you know, if we wanted someone to go out and survey the whole lot, and then potentially put together a set of plans for future cells. and maybe laying those out. And then Michael talked about like a borrow pit. So could you lay out a couple cells that you could borrow dirt from, and then maybe dig the cell as you go. So we started discussing that a couple months ago. So we thought we'd bring it to
So
you
what
guys.
does it, what would it cost, what's the cost on it?
So we have a drone, so it did decrease costs quite a bit. I can get with Wayne. He flies the drone, so he would come out, and it takes, I would say it probably takes 30 minutes to an hour to fly it. And then we're just in Ellsworth, so we're not very far away. So I can get with him on maybe some prices.
I think we need a price estimate of what it would cost. I don't think there's any doubt that we're probably gonna need cell 3.
Right.
Yeah, and the way it was initially designed is odd to me because cell 3 sets where our contact water pit is. So a new pit's going to have to be dug, relocated, and then you're going to be building on top of not very solid area that's been holding water for the last 15, 17 years, or whenever it would actually get built. It could be 20 years.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird design that was done at that time.
How many cells there potentially could be in that land there?
Boy.
Quite a few. I was just curious.
Yeah, so each of these are 100 foot, how they have it laid out now, 100 foot by I think 500 foot.
So quite a few. I just want approximately.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a lot of capability there.
Right.
How many acres is that total? Is that a quarter section?
I think it's 40 acres.
I think it's just
40 acres, yeah. Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I think there could be upwards of 20 cells total throughout the whole property. Yeah. If it was, well, it all depends on how the survey lays and how you can do it with the land and dirt and everything else.
A little bit bigger than that, yeah.
If you're not cutting into a hill, you're going to have to come up with some sides somewhere for it. A lot of fill.
So Wayne, he's our kind of our landfill guru. He works on 12 to 15 landfills around the state. We were talking to him. So if the county went out and developed some of these and got some other cells permitted for future use, then there would be some requirements, CQA. So an engineer would need to probably stake each corner of the cell and make sure it was dug in the right location. So we threw around the borrow pit, as in if we went ahead and we put some set of plans together showing future cells, maybe the county, and then we wouldn't permit those cells, then maybe the county could come in and use that material as borrow material and then slowly kind of dig that cell. So when this one gets full, you could maybe go to the next one, the one you already have dug. So that's what we kind of talked about. And then before you put trash in, you'd have to permit that cell, and then an engineer would have to review it and everything.
But he did mention that it would potentially be a good idea to have an area already laid out and permitted and designed, because Kansas is only one of the few, he said, he didn't give an exact number of states are allowed to use C&Ds that are permitted the way they are.
Right.
They usually treat them like a regular household waste facility. Right. All the other states do, so a lot of landfills are looking ahead and getting stuff permitted and laid out with the intents of being grandfathered in, so you don't have to meet those other requirements that the other style landfill takes.
Yeah, so that's KG is advising that if you have a lot of land and you want to develop it, it'd be nice to get plans done.
Get them ahead of time.
Right.
Because in 5 years they'll change the rules and then we won't qualify.
Right, because even
if we're grandfathered in, we'll be all right.
Like even like from these plans, I can 2002, I believe it has like some cover material. I think that's changed now also. So now on any landfills we design now, I think it's got like 4 foot of cover material instead of 2.5.
Yep.
So
Probably getting stricter with rules
Right.
and regulations.
Right. Right.
Constantly.
Yeah, so we talked about maybe going out and surveying the whole lot, and then, you know, if you want to do 3/4 of it as landfill, the other quarter as borrow, maybe it might be a good time to get that all kind of laid out and a set of plans put together and approved by KHE. But it's, you know, it's up to you guys.
As I said, we need a cost estimate.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can put together some numbers and then I'll give it to Michael.
Do you have anything, Bob?
Guess I don't have a whole lot other than, like I say, trying to keep up with the weather, and was still hauling some rock spotting in some places and stuff, and the weather shut us down the other day again. So, trying to keep those places fixed up, trying to get some of them barricaded. We haven't got around to get fixed because they keep different places opening up, spring's coming and stuff, so we're got a constant battle.
And we're gonna get another 6 inches of snow tonight, huh?
Yeah.
Probably,
And
something like.
The weekend.
And then rain and snow over the weekend.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah, I know.
so it's hard to keep things
Keep up, huh?
where traffic can get around and stuff anymore. Just so many bad places, and they try to keep them worked up and run over. Go out and try to work like one boy said he'd through the road a few days before and went back 3 or 4 days later and down over the snow. See the grader just dropped in about like that. Said it wasn't there 3 or 4 days ago, and then it moved. So we're fighting those kind of places, trying to keep it where people can get around as much as possible, but it's a battle right now. Yeah, hard to maintain roads in the conditions we're having to do, frozen, wet, dry. Everything's hard to make work the way we want it to. But we keep trying, and I know everybody thinks we're not, but we are trying to. So, other than that, like I say, this kind of weather, just doing a little maintenance work and stuff in the shop and whatnot we can on equipment. And trying to make some more barricades to stick up in bad places they show up, stuff like that right now. So,
You want to discuss Mr. Schneider's proposed deal with these guys?
Yes. Mr. Schneider has come back before us now to discuss what we had come up with when we agreed to Mr. Burscheidt's, excuse me, Mr. Burscheidt's, what did we pay for? Mediation, that's what we paid for. Excuse me. So here is the current situation. We had our mediation, and when the paperwork came back, Mr. Schneider did not sign it because he did not agree that he wanted to pay the $10,000 up front and let the county be the custodians of his $5,000, which was to be used or potentially used for 5 years into the future. The agreement was $5,000 for the gravel now and $5,000 for future gravel for 5 years, which meant up to $1,000 a year per year could be used out of his own personal money to reapply gravel to maintain the new gravel road. What he was saying is he doesn't feel comfortable forwarding all of that money in the event that it may or may not be used, and then what are the mechanisms in place for us to be the custodians of that, and refunds, et cetera, et cetera. I understand the situation there. My proposal to him today was, what if he pays the $5,000 up front that was agreed on in his mind for the $5,000 for the current gravel, and then anything else that he requests in the next 5 years would be at his expense. That way, we're not the custodians of his personal finances and trying to distribute and calculate the cost for his particular road into the future. I assume that because of the agreement, after 5 years, we do assume liability for maintaining his road from that point on. But the idea was to get the initial gravel laid down, see how it settles, and then for 5 years into the future, he is financially responsible for additional gravel. That being said, when we came up with that agreement, we had calculated the cost for him in some of the negotiations for coming out of Wolf Creek Pit, I believe it was. Now we have the other pit that's closer to him. What is that one? Zacco. So we were wondering, could we get a recalculation of the gravel cost?
Yeah, I think I provided you one.
With the new pit?
Yeah.
With the new pit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
We recalculated it, turned it into the board.
You have one, yes.
I'm sorry. That's my misunderstanding. I
I don't have a copy of it.
don't remember having that in my
It
files.
came and,
It might be in here.
I just filed a bunch of things and I don't remember having that.
Is it the gravel application, right?
That's
That's different.
That's the inches per, like the thickness and the length.
I have it at the office.
Yeah, I had one in here, but I don't see it.
Is it like that? Here, I'll just look through that whole file.
These were the homes I was talking about.
You're right. Okay.
Before.
I don't know if the whole thing's in that file.
I'm sorry, I don't remember having that. I do remember talking about it though, because it's, how many miles is it from your house, from that location?
half mile
That's right.
to the road.
So it's only a mile,
50th.
yeah.
50th.
That's where you would gravel on north, right?
So it's about a mile
This
round trip.
difference was the transportation cost, basically.
Yeah, it was a crow flies. Travel wise, it's more than a mile and a quarter probably. Don't we come off 40th Road down south off the section or quarter mile line?
50th Road, you just go half mile to the west and it's right there down the driveway.
Yeah, but that's not how we get in and out of it though.
Oh, okay.
We go back over on 40th south and then we gotta cut back in, go east into the pit
I
that
think
way.
this was all
so.
before,
Okay.
this
Yeah,
was
it's
before that.
Okay.
minute, but
You
that's
come
how
in
we,
from the west?
yeah, we come in from the west side.
I've
off
never
of
been
40th.
down to it. It looked like it's pretty close to his house here, so
Yeah.
I've never went down to it. I can just see the file.
Yeah.
And it was what would be, if we would gravel that road, would you have to do like a design, engineering design for that, since it was never gravel, it'd be dirt going to gravel, even though you guys worked on it somewhat, right?
Yeah,
You've done some work on it.
yeah.
What more would need to be done, can you give us an estimate on that possibly?
Well, we would just
Expense-wise?
figure the yardage of gravel we're gonna put on there, and the thickness and how many yards that's gonna be, and stake it out when we haul it and stuff, and then lay it down.
Is it as simple as just putting gravel out there, or is there a lot more involved?
No, we'll haul the gravel and lay it, and we'll roll it and blade it as we lay it, work it down.
Yeah, typically we don't do a full-blown road design for.
Well, I was wondering, I don't
Yeah,
I don't know
no,
what's
good
going on
question
there.
then.
No, because I know we do design engineering with you on some things, but I didn't know for sure on what, you know?
Yeah, no, this would be, I guess we call it maintenance.
Yeah, there's more of a maintenance type
So,
deal.
Okay.
I don't think there'd be any permitting or anything. like
Okay.
that. So. Yeah, good question.
So I guess it comes down to the price of gravel, really, because we are paying out $2 a cubic yard.
Yeah.
And whether or not you said you had said something about your own gravel. What are you proposing there?
Oh, down the road, I'd probably haul rock, put on the road.
Oh, in the future, instead of paying the county.
If it needed something down the road,
I see what you're saying.
I do that now for my driveway, get my truck down to the court side and get farmer screenings and it spreads out quite a ways, really.
Do we need a special agreement if we do something like that? Because he would be maintaining a county road, which is really, that's you guys' job normally, right? And-
Yeah, he wouldn't
and-
be able to maintain it. If he does anything.
Not maintain it, but put gravel there. But what happens if there was some liability problem? Say you put down some,
We would have to be there while they do it.
and supervise it or help?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wondered, because you get a private party like Steve doing that, and then grandma drives over there and wrecks. Were they gonna sue Steve, county or what? You know?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, because normally that's the county's job and business to do that stuff, right? Okay.
Yeah. There's some statute that says they can't do work on county right of way, so that'd have to be some kind of agreement.
Because I know some guys, when it snows 2 feet and sometimes the county ain't out there, they'll go out with their blade and clear out, part of the county road, and that, a lot of people frown upon that, you guys do, because that's,
Yeah.
they're maintaining a county road and that really isn't their job, right?
Yeah.
Because of
realize
liability
that they, when it blading snow off, dragging
Right.
snow off, they drag the rock and gravel off the road too, and.
Right. And I just was curious, in Steve's case, if we would agree to something, and he would in the future put rock there, that would be legal for a county perspective to do that.
I have had to break snow drifts for the grader to even get through, 'cause it's been that bad that
Okay.
couldn't get through there, but I could with my front wheel cells tractor, break a path for him so he could plow through it.
And I know us farmers do that, we kind of work with you guys on these roads and stuff all the time in a way, you know. But I just was wondering if you've got officially, if we do something for his road and we plan, say was there a contract going on, or do we put something in writing that says after, so many years that if we put gravel on it, then you're just maintaining it, but Steve says, well, there's a washout and you're gonna drop some new rock in there. Do we have a agreement or a contract that says that's what's gonna happen? So everybody's understood on all this?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, and like we just had a family come and request to be able to buy gravel for their stretch of road. If we're not delivering it ourselves, they can schedule with you so that you know when it's delivered. So then it's just the truck company hauling and dumping, and then the county is there with machinery to spread it at that time. So it's a matter of coordinating time.
Coordinating with you guys, and
Yeah.
as long as that's understood, so that, I'm just playing lawyer here, so that some private person, they doing something on a county road and then screws up a county road and then county gets sued for it, you know?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You just can't protect yourself enough anymore.
Right. That's all, and I'm not against, I don't mean to nitpick this thing. So that's all I got.
But also, you can't expect us to send a blade out there all day long for him to haul 2 loads.
I know.
And stuff like that.
No, I
It's
agree.
gonna-
Bob, I agree, you're in too,
Yeah.
sure.
So like I say, there's gotta be a little,
And I like
say,
that idea.
cooperation there.
No, and I like that idea with Steve, if he wants to fix a hole 10 years from now and do it himself, that's fine with me. I just looking out for the county here, so something doesn't happen, so we get sued.
Yeah.
You know.
So at $5,000, I mean, what do you happen to remember the approximate yardage that we needed for that particular job? Because what I'm worried about is you're getting half the amount.
2,300 or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say between 2,000 and 3,000, somewhere in there. 20
So then that
something.
still covers it.
Yeah.
At the cost of just the gravel. But that is what we basically negotiated at the 5,000. So you were getting more than, or you were paying for more than needed yardage at $1 a cubic yard in the original agreement.
He's paying for the haul.
Yeah.
So you said 23.
That's just a guesstimate. I don't have my yardage right here.
So it's a half-mile road. How wide is it? Is it 20 foot?
That's 23 to 24.
You want to put 4 inches down, 2 inches down.
That'd be a projected 3, I think.
3 or what?
Yeah, cost figured if you added an inch, it adds so many dollars to it every time
Okay.
you put it on there.
It's a half mile.
So it's not only a half mile.
It's a mile and a half, almost 2 miles.
2 miles.
Oh, 2 miles.
And were you still wanting to close a section of that road?
No,
You want to leave it all?
yeah. I need that snow removal.
How many yards was it?
3 inches. 2350 on 2 miles?
That's what he had guessed, 23, so that's gonna
Yeah.
be close.
Well, that's for 6 inches. 3 inches is going to be around 1,200.
For 2 miles?
No, per mile.
Per
Okay.
mile.
This is, so divide that
So
by
12 and 12 is
2.
24,
So
so it's a little
12.
less than 24.
12. Now, any future maintenance, the county would be able to review the material being put down.
I would say that
I
we
think
would
we were-
decline providing materials for a certain amount of time, in my opinion, instead of,
Well, we need to approve the material that's going to be
Yeah.
used too.
sure.
We like to write that into like the road maintenance agreements with the wind farms, make sure the county gets to approve any materials put on the road for any improvements or anything like that. Because, you know, the county gets stuck with them. Well, likely they're gonna be maintaining them.
I suppose whatever you all decide is what we will do.
Okay. Alexis, you get any more on that issue?
I think we need to put it in writing, and the payment needs to be made up front in a lump sum, and then it can be applied and agreed to that we would reject providing any more materials for a set length of time. And according to the mediation, it was supposed to be a 5-year agreement where you would pay, and we came up with $1,000 a year amount, but at this point, basically, it's whatever you would spend at your discretion for 5 years, instead of us trying to monitor your funds for that length of time in your road. And you want the ability to approve the materials if he did choose
Yes.
to apply any more in the future.
Correct.
I would like to see this resolved, because I feel like it really shows that we do not have a clear definition or view of what our county's policy is. We have a resolution that basically says, oh, well, we can do whatever we want. We can help you and we can reject you. And I can, I've shown you at least that we have 3 other projects where we provided, at the county's cost, 100% of the materials and labor, so to speak, hauling and everything. So the concept is, why do for one and not for the other? You either do for all or for none, or you have an across-the-board policy that says you split the pricing. It's a 50%,
There's-
match, or
There could be a lot of difference, actually, and I have brought it up several times over the years that we need to have a more clear-cut plan. Because depending on the road, we could invest 10 times what we are if we do this project, you
Mhm.
know, because this happens to be what I call somewhat level. There's no high shoulders above, no cuts that are narrow, you know. You could invest several days
Bridges
with
that have to be replaced.
bridges.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot of things, you know, and I was trying to mirror something off of like Saline County. You know, yeah, they're a little bit extreme, but you know, at the end of the day, I think the county needs to protect themselves. Because at some point, you're going to get backed in a corner where it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it because you did it for another. That is what I'm trying to help my budget not have to do, or this county have to do.
Right, and the resolution that we currently have is a problem because it doesn't lay out any specifics. It basically says, it uses the word discretion. Well, that can mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's why, according to that, we do what you tell us to do on this.
Yeah,
Right.
it's vague for a reason. But like, you're
but
right
it wasn't
too.
vague before that.
Yeah.
Before they changed that resolution, it was not vague, it was very specific. You will haul the gravel and provide hauling, and then we will do the work to lay it. And I think actually the landowner was only paying for the hauling, not the gravel itself.
Not gonna have it, I think you bought the gravel, hauled the gravel in the county.
Oh, so you pay for the gravel and the hauling, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, well, it was in the 80s and I read it several times, but it was very specific as to what the procedure is. Then it went vague. But if you read it in chronological order, the reason it went vague, it uses the word encourage, to encourage economic development. Well, you don't encourage economic development by putting more of a financial burden on the taxpayer. What we were basically saying is we want people to build more homes here. We want people to stay here and we want people to continue increasing our revenue and our tax base by building buildings and or homes that generate revenue on the tax roll. Is that the 1980s one? So I do think we need to soon address this resolution. It's just a basic problem. But as far as this particular situation, I would like to see it settled. I understand your concern of giving the county half of the money that you were proposed to give up front and then waiting for 5 years to see what we did with it. I mean, it's basically we're being the custodians of your individual finances, and I do see the problem with that. So I guess it's a question as to who's going to write up the agreement. Would you like to have Mr. Kringle write it?
I could, or, yeah, I could, yes.
Okay.
Or Michael, I think wrote, or Michael could write the agreement.
Well, both of you, Craig could, or he could review it though.
Yeah.
Our attorney will write it
Yeah.
if we do it. You can write one in and we can look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then that's where we are on that.
Okay.
Okay. Another thing we need to address with you is the block pit, and I just had the, oh, I'm writing on. Okay. So we had received correspondence from their attorney basically saying that they were unsatisfied with the reclamation of the land. Dawn, I have a suggestion for a change at the end, but I'll just read it. Oh, you guys have a copy?
I just gave him one.
Oh, thank you, yeah. Tanner, can you read his?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can look over here. So there's a reclamation plan. Okay. Put in place in 95.
95 was the first year reclamation plan was required. The pit was open well before that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to start providing a reclamation plan from 1995 on.
Okay.
Give you a little history on that.
The land would be reclaimed to farmland using the existing topsoil. So you've been pushing up the topsoil and saving that. And then as you go, you're probably putting it back.
Yeah, laying it back in is, yes, for its topsoil out there wasn't a couple inches about all there was on that
Right, okay.
rocky area in there.
I I would like to correct just the bottom paragraph there. I believe it should be, it is our intention, comma, I'm sorry, it is our intention that, comma, once conditions improve, comma, so take out that, the extra that, the county will plant the reclaimed areas to brome grass as provided in the reclamation plan. And then, Michael, am I correct in assuming that you've already contacted the state about this particular project, and that's when they told you it would be spring?
Yeah, we decided it would be spring due
Okay.
to the weather.
So I
'Cause
would like-
we've scheduled 2 prior times for them to come out and view this pit, and
But
both
what-
times the weather was inclement.
Okay, so that's what I'd kinda like to
So
indicate
we're-
here.
yes.
I'd like it to say, the state of Kansas has been contacted to complete the inspection needed to finish the closure process on the gravel pit, and expects to do so this spring. Does that make sense? Instead of saying that we will contact them, we already have, and so we're basically just waiting on finishing that. Did you catch that, Dawn? The last part of it? Okay.
And the brome was listed in, right there, okay.
So then after the corrections are made, I'd move to sign and send the letter regarding the Block Family Venture gravel pit agreement.
You made a motion. Okay, I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Do you have anything else that you'd like to be added or edited?
I think it's fine.
You guys do the work yourselves on planting it and everything?
No.
You hire
Probably hire.
Levine or somebody?
Okay, if there's no further discussion, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay.
Do you guys all want copies? So one is sufficient?
We just need to sign, yeah, we just need one to sign. And while you're here, we have been talking about doing spending policies per department. We had the health department and the EMS give us basically an idea of what types of spending they need to do without our permission. For example, the health department orders vaccinations and the EMS department orders supplies that they keep on their trucks. Those kinds of things, you know, we wouldn't be monitoring the expense because we don't know what it could be at any given time. And it was probable that it would be higher than a typical expense. So if they're gonna replace a chair or, you know, make any other type of purchase that wasn't what did we end up calling those?
Called them capital expenditures. It wasn't a capital expenditures, or they have contractual power, they have contractual budget. I think this one said that
So I guess what we're saying is we need to come up with a spending policy, and we have this county purchase policy that, it's my understanding that at the time this was implemented, they were trying to overbridge all departments, including other county elected officials, which is not going to happen. It's not legal to do so. The state basically defines that all individual elected officials maintain their own budgets, and some are even exempt to stay within their budget. So, excluding the elected officials, the departments over which we see, we'd still like to implement a purchasing policy. And it's going to vary by department because of your expenses. So to give you an example, I think the health department said $1,000 is what she said, and I mean, EMS said typically you wouldn't even need more than 250, so I suppose we go with something like 500 or something to that, you know, along those lines. This countywide purchase policy was for $500. It's basically to ensure that we're going to be getting bids on items, on purchasing items, so that we can make the best decision, and or that we're going to approve things. For example, we can't really say that it's just if it's within contractual line item, that it's okay to spend, because, Michael, you brought us proposals from multiple firms that wanted to do a contractual agreement to provide engineering services. So what we did was we went ahead and bid that out, and the commission approved it. I mean, technically, that could happen within the department, but I do feel that a lot of those things should be done before the public eye, so that's why you would bring them before the commission for commission approval. Although you're still spending it out of your approved budget. Does that make sense? So we kind of need to know where you are on spending as far as what you think would be an appropriate amount. LaDonna gave the example, she had a light that needed fixed, or it was something like that, that she just called and had it done. So instead of bidding it out for $700, you know, she just had it completed. And I'm making up numbers because I don't remember what it was. But assurance of bidding, you know, assurance of...
Is that still seeking approval after doing bids? I mean, I guess, you know, like if I bid culverts, I guess I never really bring it to the board. We just put the bid out to the 3 vendors and keep it in-house, and then low bid gets it. I mean,
In this one that is still policy that isn't being followed, it says that yours, basically says, however, this policy does not apply to fuel, gravel, or road improvement purchases. It had a $500. It basically dealt with repair of equipment and or a bunch of supplies, you know. But it did exempt fuel, which, you know, that's something that's got to be purchased. Gravel, you don't know what, you know, we know what we're paying.
You're not going to bid out gravel.
And road improvements, which I would guess would be, you know, I think you usually bring the culvert, do you bring the culvert bids into us? I know you call, because we've asked you several times, you call around and get the best bid, you know, which I would consider a road improvement, because you never know when we're going to need that supply of culverts. You know, we may need them, may have a big rain, and we may need culverts.
Yeah. You know, and same way with bridge steel, you know, I always put out the bids. Concrete,
I think
you're kind of, that can turn into a big expense on a project, you know, but will that be viewed as a road improvement material? You know, because we're not going to be bidding it anyways. I mean,
well, most of those, we're aware of those projects going on.
Yes,
we have
correct.
approved those projects to be done.
Correct.
This also has a good bullet point. It says the board realizes that emergencies shall arise and it will not be possible for the pre-approved status on certain items. And if this should happen, the department head shall be responsible to notify the board of items purchased and circumstances surrounding the purchase at the next commission meeting. So I think that's something we should include as well. I think it's basically saying that if you're going to go out and purchase new desks or new chairs or
computers,
right, supplies in that manner, that it needs to come before the commission. I would agree, the fuel, gravel, and road improvement purchases, I mean, we can't possibly micromanage that, nor would I want to, but it's just the idea of having a protocol for doing bidding, making sure that gets done. Because statutorily, I think we're only required to bid if it's
25,000.
Is it 25?
or higher.
Yeah.
At one time, I thought that's what our spending policy was set at, but I guess
This has never been changed, and this is 2001.
Okay.
So this is the prior board of Koberman, Heller, and Gommel.
Yeah, Doug Holman.
Uh-huh. So nothing's been done since this.
So then, like, if you ask me to do permits and it takes an hour, then since it's professional services, can I still do that?
Well, yeah, I don't know. By statute, professional services don't have to be.
Right, they don't really apply.
Yeah, but it depends on what the county policy is going to be.
There's just a lot of like on-calls, so I've got an on-call agreement, so I usually set up a mon code if, you know, he needs permitted for off system 105. So I just did the permits real quick. They just asked me to do it.
Well, in my opinion, we've already contracted with you, so I believe we're kind of looking to you for those type of engineering services because we're paying a monthly fee to have you available. And I know that basically was to include your day here and then some of the regulatory things that you do, and not all those. I know we get billed for some of the extra things, But it's
Yeah.
my assumption that's why we chose, we had
Right.
bids and we chose yours.
Right, okay.
Speaking of which, was that a year? A year
Yeah.
contract? So where
Or
are,
it's, yeah, per the year, and you guys can end it whenever.
so where are
and
we
keep
on
it.
that?
Where are we on that?
Yeah.
So I think good question.
As far as
I think
the
it
year,
just,
as far as
it
the-
just keeps going until, I don't know if there's actually an expiration date on it.
Okay.
I don't think there was.
Yeah. I think it just goes on.
Any ongoing work like that, so it should be under a envelope or something where you can do work, right? You
Right.
don't have to call us every 10 minutes to confirm you can do something. I
Right.
mean, we don't want that.
Right.
Just like your gravel or your culverts or something. That's part of your everyday work. It's like LaDonna getting vaccines. She don't have to call us if she can order $1,000 worth of vaccines, because that's her regular product.
Right. She's not
But if she's
purchasing
gonna go
something-
out and get a new car, or say a computer costs $5,000, that's a different deal, and but it's different.
Brandon had a name for it. It was something like consumables. Isn't
Yeah.
that what he said? Consumables.
Well, it's something that's not part of the normal work.
Well,
work
it
day.
disappears basically, or it
Right.
gets used. It doesn't become a fixed asset and property of the county. If it does, then I think it needs to be approved. I appreciated being able to do bids on the engineering work, because otherwise, you're just going with someone that you've developed a relationship with, which doesn't necessarily mean you're being provided the best services. So, for that, I think we had 2 or 3 on that one.
I believe just 2.
And like
Yeah.
if you get tires for your vehicles and all that, you don't have to ask us for approval on that, do they? Unless they're well, maybe you do.
They're not cheap.
No, a lot of them are very expensive.
You know,
I know.
'cause
Depends on what.
There's times that,
You got a $5,000 tire.
they
right?
might call us up, a vendor may call us up and say, hey, we got a special on this tire, it's $200 off.
Mhm.
On a $900 tire that we can pick up for $700,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like, you take them today? And if I need some, I will say yes, because that's $200 per tire savings.
Right.
When they're the same tires that we are currently running. If it's some oddball or something like that, no, I'm not gonna be interested, but, I've done that numerous times on motor graders. They buy a surplus, and they can't get rid of them, and they gotta get them gone, or else they lose their discount from the factory. So they'll take a loss on them to be able to keep that volume discount through their
Sure.
supplier, or through the factory, so.
And you shouldn't have to ask us for that $700 tire, because you're gonna find.
And I might buy a dozen of them, I might spend $7,000 on tires.
Right.
And I
So-
think, again, that's part of the normal work process.
Well, this is a work in progress, and I think we have to come up with some words
Yeah.
and some definitions of vocabulary that we need to use in this. But for example, I know it was more than a year ago, emergency management needed repairs on his truck. So he did go to 2 or 3 different places. Well, they all came down with a different diagnosis, and the cost was, it was completely varied. So I think that needs to come before the commission, before we just always assume that the greatest amount of work needs done and the greatest amount of money needs spent, because, where's the validation and verification of that?
They got kind of a special case.
With all the equipment that they
You guys do.
manage.
Yeah,
Right.
because they got a lot of equipment, like if you need an engine overhauls, we have to, like if you get an engine overhaul, it costs $10,000, $20,000 or whatever.
You're gonna know about it.
You are gonna know about that, right? But see, that's where, there may be a line, I don't know what the right number I'll do,
It's kind of
I don't
tough,
think
I
it's
guess.
a number, I think
right.
a lot of it depends on
Situation.
the situation, and also, you gotta have confidence in your department head.
Exactly.
He will inform you of the
Right.
things that may be.
That's what I was gonna
very
say,
expensive.
going through expenditures every month, is there something that red flagged or something like that, I'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Cause I don't believe that we've really abused anything.
Right. It's common sense.
So-
You guys got a lot of high ticket items with all your big
Right.
equipment.
Unfortunately, yes.
Big equipment and stuff. That's part of the job.
Well, so with this department, more than being a number, then it needs to be an identified purchase as far as a type of purchase. So we can work on that. That helps a lot.
Keep him safe, Michael.
We'll try
It's
and,
bad.
it's just,
Safe.
hope the National Weather Service can be wrong on it.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, hopefully
This,
it's,
this weekend's
Trace.
looking like a pretty good storm again.
oh, that rain, the rain.
Wait, this is
before,
the
I mean,
transfer
you got
station,
6
right?
inches of snow.
Okay, so this is where
Then
they're
you get-
currently, and
then
this is
you
one
get
that's close
rain,
beside
then
it.
it's
Then they say
rain.
The-
maybe
in the
2
upper
more
corner.
inches of snow.
So I heard you talking about being
Five.
grandfathered in. Should we
Saturday
go
night,
ahead and
calling for 5
plan for
inches.
more than one
Yeah.
That's
into
what
the
You
future?
come out and
I
help
mean,
me.
DEP is
We'll
like.
check.
I don't know where you live
You
at.
want it right
I
now.
would, I don't
Really,
know
we
where
should
you
just
live.
take up this
Somewhere
whole
over Martin.
section
Right,
and
right.
pre.
I bet
I
he'll
got
Is
send
this
you a
width the
map.
same as this width?
Yeah,
Here
this
and
weather, you
here?
guys,
Looks
It
you
about
kind of
know,
looks
equal.
about right.
and I wanna
So we were
compliment
thinking
you guys
come in
get
and
criticized
survey,
a lot.
which we have that drone.
You
so
know,
it-
people
and
like
it
a letter
You
like
can do a
that.
survey
You
like
guys
that.
do a
quick,
good job
an
this
hour.
weather last
Instead of sending a guy out by foot,
You're
you just
doing a
fly
good
it.
job as best you
We were
can.
Oh,
thinking
thank you.
survey the
I
whole
told
time.
you, I was gonna
Told
call
you
you.
And then
guys
plan
to,
segments
You're
of
gonna
it.
get
That's,
yelled
yeah,
at, I
yeah,
know.
And then
definitely.
get
Especially
them
this weather's been terrible
pretty
last
much
winter,
approved
since
by
October
KP, so that
on, you know,
we
we
don't
had all that
have
rain
to
and
meet any
snow
of these new regulations.
Yes,
Guys are
and
having
then
a hard
it's into
time
the future,
coping
that
with
lot.
Oh,
road
yeah.
conditions
Right,
that
right.
change
That sounds good.
Right.
every 100 feet. so.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to read that letter, Bob? Do we need to get a copy of it before you leave?
I
Are we done, or?
No, actually, we had to. Well, I want your approval so we can print out that public notice. Hold on one second. I'm gonna get a copy of this.
All right,
too.
thank you.
Too much paper here.
A lot of it.
Well, go fix all the roads, Bob.
Well, sounded like I've never been out there, but we was down it twice before this all come about. Visited with a man and said he needed to do a little improvement.
Maybe you need to show him a copy of it too.
Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. If you guys got any questions, I'm ready to holler.
Okay, thanks.
That's your
Yeah.
hospital, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess we got a meeting tonight. Wonderful. I don't know, hell, it'll probably be a blizzard. 6 o'clock.
Turn my phone off, I guess, today either. That's why it didn't ring.
Is the snow moving in now?
I don't know, I hope
I
not.
look at the radar here.
I just soon I got home and got fed.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet feeding your cows no fun.
Don't let me rush you.
Okay, thank you. Dawn, I'm gonna give you the original.
Moving in right now.
Yeah, it is.
Wonderful.
Okay, so Dawn, we do need, some clarification on those Lincoln Park Manor bills before we approve them. Have any checks been sent out?
No,
Okay,
and we won't until.
till the end of the month, so we still have a week to be able to clarify those. That one might be a duplicate for the shower kit, and then the other one doesn't even say what it was at all.
That was the Archer bill.
Yes,
No, it kinda says back here, it's, well, it says,
what does it say?
Fedwire route, oh, that's,
That's how to pay,
yeah.
like an ACH payment.
Yeah, well, I saw here somewhere where it might be. Yeah, I thought it said, Doesn't really say what's,
No, I couldn't see that.
whatever, I don't know either.
Okay, so what we need to, I'm sorry. Someone's not having it. So what we need to decide is when we'd like to schedule our meeting for Lincoln Park Manor.
Oh, you mean,
I thought you was gonna send a press release out.
Well, I have it here that I'm gonna share with you, but I'm saying we need to talk about when we wanna have that meeting.
you mean,
What are we gonna talk about? What else do you have to say besides it's not in your press release, I guess?
Well, I mean, I thought the whole point of the press release was to tell them where we are and then expect some feedback as far as what the public wants to do. I mean, you've said several times it's gonna cost money. What if they're not willing to double or triple the subsidy? What if we can't, we can't guarantee that's not gonna exponentially grow? If, let's say we go through one management company and they fail to be financially responsible and ask for a bigger subsidy, so here we are doubling it, and then they no longer want our contract, so we have to search for another management company, and they want that same subsidy, and then ask for more. I mean, how are we gonna put any parameters or guidelines? Because as Dawn mentioned, we have a tax lid. Let's say, I'm just throwing out total hypothetical numbers here, but let's say right now it's at 120. Let's say we know it's gonna go to 350,000. That doesn't fall within our 1.44% increase. So we would have to have a public vote to be able to increase our budget that much. So we better let them know and have them a public session to be able to express whether or not they're even gonna vote for that. Why would we even put it on the ballot if we don't think that's gonna pass? And then if it doesn't pass, we can't distribute that money to the nursing home, no matter who's managing it at this point. Do you follow?
well, kind of. I was curious, like we just used web money for schools, could we use web money for this too without having a special ballot?
The commission can use web money for whatever it wants, but
Your
that
answer
only.
is yes. Yes, we can, but it's eventually gonna run out.
Right, I realize
And do we
that.
wanna spend web money for just that purpose? There's other needs in this county, I mean.
Right, no, I realize your
See.
point, I just asked you a
Yeah.
question if we could use it, and I'm not saying we should either,
No.
I'm just wondering but so really, what you're saying, Lex, is, to raise the cap, we almost need to vote, and then to approve it, and, I see, I don't know, I think we should, I was talking before, maybe to have some meetings, a general public meeting, but Aljo has a question, or two, about what are we gonna really talk about. We could just, the press release kinda say where we're at,
I think the press release needs to say that the commissioners are seeking feedback on how much money, or, how much we're going to be willing to put forth.
Yeah.
When we first started this, I think we were kinda under the assumption it could be a break-even deal. But it doesn't appear to be a break-even.
No.
It doesn't appear to be break-even. And I think that's what the press release, you kinda have to kinda say that it appears that the operation of this nursing home is going to take regular or yearly tax levied money for its operation, in some way like that. You talked about the subsidy, and I've thought about that quite a little. The subsidy we're given now is only that we're forgiving the rent, because the other is we're doing the repairs. We've always done the repairs.
But in a typical landlord-tenant situation.
But I'm saying we always have. They made that decision before I came on the commission. I don't know what year it was. They decided that they were going to start levying money for that nursing home. And they were able to do it within their budget, is what they did.
Yeah.
And at one time, I think it was about 5 mills they were going to do. But, of course, our evaluation's gone up, but.
Do you want to shut that door? Sorry.
But, so, what we're subsidizing him for is we're not collecting any rent, Because we have been doing the repairs on that building long before I started.
Have you heard any more, Alexis, from anybody on this stuff, or from these attorneys or anybody on?
No,
Well, I'm just curious, because it's been a few weeks and we haven't, nothing news come out, and I'm just, people are wondering what's going on with it. And I guess our press release will say that, though, so. but I agree with what Al Joe said, we may, on the, state the funding, and it may cost us more, how much, who knows? And the transition, how to take it over, I have a concern over, because seems like nobody really knows what's, or those attorneys we even talk to have options, but nobody seems to recommend us what to do. You
Well,
know?
and
we don't know, I don't know what the hell to do.
part of that is hinging on the new administration at the state level.
Yeah.
Because we have to deal directly with the state, and now that there's a new governor, and we do not yet, as far as I have looked into, do not yet have the head of the KDADS
I don't.
appointed.
I
There was a
don't.
temporary one appointed, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether she went ahead.
I think the existing one from
There's-
Brownback was still there, but he was going off, right?
He was leaving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a good point. We're gonna be dealing with that change between the new administration and governor. So, but I think a press release probably is good, and maybe no meeting yet. I kinda brought up maybe we should have a meeting, but I kinda agree, and maybe what Al Joe's insinuating is that I don't know if we have a meeting, what are we gonna talk about? And, you know, some people maybe say, well, I'm for it, I'm against it, and then what's that gonna accomplish, really? And we wouldn't have any more to tell them probably than the press release. I don't know anyway.
You know, the big hangup appears to be the license.
Mhm.
And I guess, what do they do? I suppose the only way, like Wilson, is because the state took it over, is the only way they got
The license.
that Wilson did not own the license.
Well, you know, to be honest, I don't know if they did or not. But it's not a county-owned facility.
See, the other, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
somebody owned it.
Privately owned.
But I'm saying if,
Was it a
So when
company
you-
build it? I don't know.
well,
Or did the city of Wilson build it?
no,
Because some of those cities.
oh, I don't know who built it.
Took them, you see, I can't, because when we had the problem, you know, I said, well, what if, I told the CMS people, I said, well, this is going to break this business, and it's going to go out of business. And I said, so then we will start up, you know, have somebody else come in. And they said, no, you won't, because the license follows the building. So once she lost that, the building was done. So I don't understand, you see where I'm going?
Mhm.
I don't understand how,
Is the facility licensed or is the operator licensed, is what you're getting at? Mhm.
well, it appeared that they were both, that the facility license, if it has a license, was tied to the operator license if she lost her license.
Mhm.
Now that doesn't make sense to me, I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Right, right.
You know, it looks to me like the building should have a license, you know,
A standalone.
a standalone license, and that's what we're trying to get, isn't it?
Well,
From what I'm seeing now, isn't that what the problem is? That if he would give us the license.
that's what this trial paperwork is, transfer of ownership. So the only people I've spoken to that operate nursing homes have bought and sold in the private sector. Okay, I did talk to a county-owned one, but theirs is, the only one I've gotten real information from is coexistent with their hospital. So in the private sector, you know, this company comes in and they say, we want to purchase your nursing home. And the seller says, okay, and they sell them everything. So really, it comes with the building, but it's my understanding, let's say you're a firm that owns multiple nursing homes. You have separate license for each facility. You are the provider and the management company, but you still have to have a license for each location, is the way that I understand it. So then after you have a license for your location, you still have to have an administrator who has an administrative license. So there are two, it's a twofold thing. Oh, thank you. So yes, that is the biggest hang up, because and what we were told by the attorneys, which I believe needs to be shared, is that we cannot just have the license ourselves. We're not nursing home operators. So that poses a big problem. We can't just ask the state to give us a license. We don't run nursing homes. They want to see that we have a mechanism in place for management.
Management.
Right, so let's say we find a third party that's willing to manage. They are already accredited and have a rapport and a relationship, having other licenses in other places. So then the state says, okay, you can have the license because we know that you're gonna hire. But that's where the question comes in. It's like, okay, so what if we sign a 2-year contract with them and then they leave? Do we still have that license? Because then we just find another management company.
Mm-hmm.
And you would work it into your lease that says you have to give us a 90-day notice. That way we can solicit for new companies to come in, and that, you know, you can't quit or you can't release your duties of the operation until we have another company set in place.
Well, weren't we buying this from Mr. Grace because of getting his license, right? He owns the license to operate it, doesn't he? Or is that for the facility?
No, it's Lincoln Park Manor owns the license, and he bought that.
And that's what, if we bought either the stock or the assets from him, whatever, that would
You
come
know,
with
that's
it.
strange because Kristen didn't buy Mid-America.
How did that work?
I don't know. I don't know.
We need to talk to our attorneys probably to explain all this better to us.
I don't know how that worked.
Shouldn't these attorneys?
Because they're still, I mean, they're operating. I don't know whether they gave her, we basically kicked them out and she took over.
And it was under a different company name. So it wasn't even as if that company
No,
just...
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I wonder if things have changed that much in that amount of time.
I don't know. Of course, you know, the regulations have changed too. I don't know. But I'm still puzzled. I can't figure this out. But have we heard from any of the management companies?
No, because the last that we had discussed, we were suggested by the auditor a particular company, but I don't think we had reached out to them at that point. I really think the commission needs to just draft a general letter that says, we want interest in this facility. This is what we have, this is what's going on, and then I believe we need to just send that out to as many as we can find. And so I will put that in here about us being in the process of searching for management companies. Because I think we were waiting on the attorney and the auditor, and they've given us, you know, a point of contact, but I really think it's the commission's due diligence to just put it out there and see what comes back. Because there's more than just one company, you know.
But we have to still get the license from Mr. Grace, don't we? Because if we
Well,
get,
we may not.
but if
they're licensed, they may be able to go.
That's what I'm wondering. If you have a licensed management company that comes in and says,
They're
hey,
licensed.
KDADs, we're gonna take
then
over
we
this
don't need his
facility.
license.
Can we get a new one?
Well, I thought we had to get his, because if we applied for a new one,
Well,
then we would have to grandfather, that our facility was grandfathered in if we get Grace's license, right?
Okay.
That's my understanding. But now if we get a whole brand new one, then we would have to widen the hallways and all this stuff.
That's,
right?
okay, you're exactly right. But remember, that's what we were told in committee by particular heads of department
Yeah,
on the phone who are now no longer even there. Does that make sense?
yeah.
So if that was something that they came up with in order to transfer the paperwork on their end, they're not even the same people there anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, they didn't cite any statute to us that said that that's how it has to happen. They were just advising us that that's how it has to happen. And I will put a plug in there that says that those people had worked with Mr. Grace in the past. So, you know, if now we have administration that doesn't have any particular ties to him, maybe they are in agreement that if a licensed company who is already running licensed facilities in other areas comes in and wants to run yet another operation, that they will just obtain their own individual license. Yet, we're still in the same problem, because now we're contracting or renting to another company who holds their own license, which we're not on. But it does say in the statute that you can have two parties on the license. So maybe we want to do that. If we reach out to a management company and they say, oh yes, we can come in and we can obtain a license, then we need to say, for our particular facility, we want to be listed on the license as well.
Sure, because if they leave, we want to still have control.
And that's what we've never had in the past.
Yeah.
So
No, that's a good
that's
point.
where we are.
That's a good point. We need to research all that, on that stuff on these licenses. Or
Mhm.
ask somebody who knows this stuff. Our attorneys did in Topeka, right?
Yes, and I addressed some of that in here. I gave a quick synopsis of the history. Throughout the history of Throughout the history of the county's ownership of the local nursing home facility, since its inception in 1962, Lincoln County has been a landlord renting to various operators. Until recent contemplations, the county has not been an active participant in patient care or oversight of management. Other county-owned facilities have appointed boards who manage operations or hold the license while renting to contracted operators, and that's what I've been told. The instability reflected in the financial talks of late with current owners urges Lincoln County to find a new solution to sustaining the nursing home. Local taxes subsidize the operation facility in the fashion of absorption of yearly property tax, insurance on the building, purchases of equipment, fixtures and amenities, repairs, labor, and recurring maintenance. The most recent county budgets have included a yearly line item for $120,000 coming out of the general fund by the commission's order. The most recent tenant operator is John Grace, who purchased the operating company Lincoln Park Manor from the current licensed administrator, Kristen Robinson. He has since moved the home health care portion of the business into Russell County and claimed financial destitution for the long-term care. The commission has been approached numerous times by owner John Grace. Initial proposals were offered during his purchase of the business. The commission was propositioned to invest public money for the turnover of this entity to a nonprofit group, as well as subsidize a new facility to be built on the city's free property. It has currently been requested to purchase the operation. The commission has not agreed to any of Mr. Grace's various wishes over the last year and a half of his 3-year lease. Threats to close the doors of the operation have been whispered after the county's refusals to fund any of these plans. At this point, it is necessary to find a way to manage the current facility in a prudent manner that will not continue to jeopardize the financial stability or longevity of the operation. Kansas's tax lid limits the total budget increase for your county, and any spending above that would require a public vote if we are to build in greater yearly spending for the nursing home in the future. The commission has sought help from the county attorney, who is now the point of contact for other hired professionals. We are currently working with the same attorney and auditor from the county hospital, who were selected by a committee appointed by the commission. Preparations have reduced to executive sessions with the commission and our hired legal team. The committee is no longer meeting at this time. Our hope is to resolve this issue by acquiring the license we need from the state and appointing a management firm who will be contracted to the commission by terms we set forth. Direct oversight is a goal, with better leases, arrangements, and control moving into the future. It is unlikely Lincoln County will continue to be a landlord to independent, private, for-profit companies in the future. Options of I want to change that a little bit too. Under the same terms, under previous terms. Options of marketing the entire nursing home operation and facility to reputable buyers have not been discussed at this time. The commission is in need of public opinion and commitment to continued funding if there is a subsidy regardless of management firms. We will be scheduling, now see, this is where I was going to say we will be scheduling public talks to welcome input from taxpayers regarding the extent to which public funding will remain and or increase. But you're saying you don't want to do that?
Well, not yet, maybe later.
I think they need to say that we would like to hear either written or verbally from.
Yeah.
Okay, so we welcome public input. Please correspond with the commission at
Either
216
vocally or, vocally or
West Lincoln, East
verbally.
Lincoln.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't think a meeting now would serve a purpose, a public meeting. Because we wouldn't tell them any more than you just said there in your letter.
Well, it's true that we don't have a lot to say, but here's my thought on that. We've had some correspondence from people who have written in, and it's basically people who have their loved ones there or have had their loved ones there, and or people who work there, or are writing on behalf of people who work there, because, a lot of the worry is, okay, if that goes away, because the only threat that there's ever been to close it is from the current owner. So if that's what people are worried about, they're writing in or calling in support of maintaining the nursing home at all costs because it's the concept of losing jobs. But my problem is we're not really addressing the public taxpayer in that scenario. I mean, I don't know who is out there paying taxes who's going to write in particularly about this issue. The people that are going to write in about this issue are the ones that are either directly or indirectly affected because they
got their family residence.
We have never opened it up and said, hey, this may cost you. When people start seeing, hey, this is going to cost you, they have a little more interest. This isn't, closing it only affects the people that are there. It doesn't affect John Doe, but cost
yes.
gets Mary that doesn't have anybody else in this county, but she owns property.
Mhm.
She's gonna say, hey, you know,
Mhm.
I don't want my tax money
Mhm.
going to that facility, or I do want my tax money going
Right.
to that
Mhm.
facility. You know.
Yes.
So, Alexis, you thinking then we should?
The other thing, Alexis, about having a public meeting at this point is that I fear that it could, pit people against people, and I don't think that's what we want.
I agree with you. You have some of it for.
Yeah, you know, I
Yeah.
think, you know, you get them in a room, you know, and it could get,
Into a yelling match.
you know, so I think maybe it would be better if we receive those,
Maybe
You
later,
know.
maybe later.
you know, and once we have this information, we
Well,
have
maybe
something to
once we come
say
up
to
with
the
some
people.
numbers.
Yeah.
If we
We
come
say
up
to
with
the
some numbers,
people,
we can
hey,
put the numbers
we've
out
had
there.
60% of these people say, hey, they're willing to put some money up, tax money into this building, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Or we've got 70% that say, don't you dare put an ounce of my money in that thing.
Yeah.
So then how do we approach the issue? Because if, let's say that, and again, I'm just totally throwing out something hypothetical. Let's say we're just gonna pay for the first year and whatever that dollar amount comes to is taken out of the web fund, just because we say that that's how we're gonna pay for our upfront expenses.
I think that is going to have to, if we decide to go through with this, that's gonna have to be said, you know, we're going to have to pull from the web fund until we can reach a point we don't. I've always thought that if we took this on, we would have to bear the startup costs, which I'll throw out $250,000. To start up the business, it'll take $250,000, and that would come from the web fund. Then I was hoping it would sustain itself. You know, and that's kind of the proposal
But let's
that
just
committee
say,
gave us, except they wanted us to take on all this other debt
yeah,
besides,
yes.
which was gonna come up to $500,000.
But let's say that happens, the $250,000 is spent. Now we have to increase from 120 to 300,000 a year.
You're gonna have to go to a vote, you're gonna have to put out, just like they did, raise the 2 mills for the senior citizen.
Mhm.
You're either gonna have to do that, or the people are gonna say, we can't do this, we'll just have to tell them, it'll have to close. You know, hopefully you can do it within a year, out front, you know. Say, the first year we put in the $250,000, then we have to have 300,000. We can say, we cannot do this another time. You're either gonna vote these mills in, or it will close.
But I'm saying, what's the point of spending the $250,000 if they're just gonna vote it down in a year? I mean, then we're
Cause, I guess, economic development, we know that it pumps a lot of money into this community. I guess it would be my reason to tell you and I think people wanna give it a chance.
And I don't think you know that people vote it down either.
No.
But I know what you're saying too. You're saying, why, if we don't know, why would we throw $250,000 out there and then it shuts down, where we just put $250,000 up for another year to live, to sustain ourselves? Yeah, well, we don't know. You don't know unless we have a vote eventually, you're gonna fund it or not. We don't know. I think, I don't know, but most of the community would want to see it stay. But, well, like Al Joe says, when they have to start pulling more money on tax dollar money, all of a sudden they may change their mind. Everybody's for everything when they don't have to pay for it.
So what about the idea that if the county is going to have to provide that kind of dollar amount, I mean, what have we done as far as outreach to see if there's anyone that wants to own it and operate it? I mean, if they're a nonprofit, they don't pay property tax, correct?
Right.
So that's one of the expenses that you don't have if you're running a for-profit, which we've been absorbing anyhow. So we're not at a loss because we haven't been collecting it. Now, we're not out any rent because we haven't collected that either. But I guess I'm saying there seems to be a fear, or the last time we had a public meeting, or I should say the last time the public came to the commission, which we had upstairs in the courthouse, in the courtroom, there was a lot of verbalization from people who had relatives in there or have worked there that said, you know, we don't want you to sell it because then it might close. But now I'm looking at it saying, you know, how do you know what the difference is of its chances of closing if you're gonna put it out there in the private market and let someone try to run it as a viable business versus keep upping your subsidy to try to run it from the government standpoint to the point where you can't afford it anymore? I mean, what's the difference? Do you leave it in the government's hands and just keep increasing that subsidy until the people have had enough? Or do you put it out there in the private sector and say, make a go of this business? I mean, the building isn't gonna disappear. You know, regardless of who is running it. The building doesn't just vanish. But we're already being propositioned with threats because it's basically because we didn't do what was asked of us, which was spend money on someone's personal vision.
I think you're right. I think you're right there. I think you're right, but I will say, and I guess I have met with John Grace. John Grace has called me several times, and I have always said to him, there is no way the county is going to pump money into this. Forget it. He's called me several times, and I said, John, we're not going to do it. You cannot count on the county coming in and pumping money into this. You know, I think he sees this big pot out there that we've got. But, you know, and I have been as blunt as I could. We're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. You know, because we cannot bail a private business. I don't feel I want to spend public money on to bail a private business out.
Right.
You know, that's.
We didn't acquire that debt. Someone else did.
I you know, that, you know, and I kind of, that's where I'm still at. I think you did a good job, Alexis, on the letter.
Yeah, I do too.
Thanks.
I think it's.
I'll tweak it a little more and I'll email it.
And you,
Don't respond to my email.
We
but
won't
I'll just
respond.
You won't email it to me, because you'll have to text it.
But you can email, you got my
text
Yeah,
email.
I have yours because I've.
Yeah.
You can email it to Dawn. Dawn can
Yeah.
copy
Yeah,
it and
that's really
text it
better.
to me.
I'll email it to you and you can send it out.
You can email me, Alexis, I won't respond back.
Okay.
No, but what you've read so far sounds good.
I wanted to give a little bit of a hit because some people are going to be reading this that don't necessarily know all of the intricacies, and I just want to give a little bit of the history
that's good.
as to how we've structured it and what I've been told by other counties. You know, like I said, the one like Marion County is the example I'll use. Their CEO of their hospital is also the administrator of their nursing home, and so they have a branched out, and they both receive county funds. Now I understand there's some confusion about how you get your swing bed care and how Medicare reimburses your nurse rate and your administration rate, etc. But other counties that I've talked to, that I talked to last year, and I haven't contacted them again, but they held their license and then they would hire in the management company and they would do it. So there's still a question as to how you hold that license if you're not. Because the three of us are basically holding the license in that, which none of us are nursing home administrators. Mm-hmm. And the attorney was telling us that in order to ask KDADs for a license, we need to have some kind of administration in place.
We have to have that management company in
right.
place.
That's what.
Then I think we can get it.
So then what we really need to do is send out a blanket letter soliciting, it's basically like an RFP, soliciting for them, for their interest in our facility.
Management company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you do that.
Yeah.
And we have plenty of statistics in our correspondence with
right.
you know, to say how many beds we have and what our daily rate is, et cetera. And that's what they'll want to.
They'll know that.
Yeah, they have cost report.
They already got all that.
Yes.
They're probably just sitting there. Hopefully they're sitting there waiting for us to say it.
Yes.
What else do we have, Alexis?
I believe that's it for today.
Oh, this stuff we don't know yet, do we?
Well, she was gonna check on
Yeah.
those bills,
Yeah.
and we approved this. Oh, we need to sign this. Dawn, did you print one out?
Yes, I laid it on Aljo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did I put it up?
This, she just amended the letter.
I thought you saw me. Sorry.
Where did I do it? Maybe I put it in my bag.
Good question. I was like, everybody was here.
Yep, here it is.
And this, do you need a, I signed that, is that what I'm?
Yep.
We've got too much paper.
Oh, I move we approve the correspondence to, or did we?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
The other thing, Don, are those, and I forgot to ask Michael, are those gravel agreements due the 1st of March or the 1st of April?
April 1st. March
April?
31st.
April, okay.
write that down and double check.
And so then Dawn had put together a note here, because I had asked about the hospital public vote. It says, how many times did we increase the mill levy for the hospital, and was an additional 2 mil increase voted on for 5 years that ended in 1980? Okay, so we don't know when the first mill was established, is that why there's a question mark?
Yeah,
47, right?
Well, 1947
Oh.
was 2 mills, 1984 was 3
Oh, when,
mills.
when they built the hospital.
because they have up to 10. So
1996 is 4 mills. Is that how it's worded, up to 10?
Or the last vote was up to.
So the last 4, potentially the 7 or 6 are set in place,
Yeah.
and then the last 4 is up to 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a period and I wanna say it ended in 1980 to 1975 where they voted 2 mills in for a 5-year period.
And then it
And then it ceased.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
So-
interesting.
And I think I'm almost sure it was for improvements. I just skimmed it, so.
Yeah.
What year did you say that was,
It
Don?
ended in 80, so it would have been 75 to 80.
But I couldn't figure out the first mill. And even when they said they
We
voted
seem to have a recurring problem with
a
that.
2 mil, well, I'm wondering if it wasn't set by statute, where the statute said you could levy X amount.
So they just did without creating a resolution to do it, yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Because it's kind of hard because once they repeal them,
Yeah.
it just goes.
Yeah, well, thank you for finding that. I think that's interesting to note, to see how the funding is developed. I'll adjourn the meeting.
We're adjourned. I second. Oh, we don't have to second it.
I guess not, we're shutting it down.
Well, I've